At 3 in the morning, billionaire Adrian Voss pushed open his penthouse door and froze. Someone was in his bed. Not a lover. Not an intruder with a weapon. A terrified young woman curled beneath his Egyptian cotton sheets, her knuckles white around the fabric, a purple bruise blooming across her cheekbone like spilled wine. She wasn't supposed to be there. He wasn't supposed to care. But when her eyes snapped open, wild, hunted, bracing for violence, something shifted in the carefully controlled architecture of his life. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. Before we begin, if you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and let's dive in. The elevator to Adrian Voss's penthouse required 3 separate keycards and a retinal scan. Most people found that excessive. Adrian found it necessary. When you owned half the luxury hotels in the eastern seaboard and had enemies who smiled at charity galas while hiring investigators to comb through your trash, paranoia wasn't a character flaw. It was survival. The doors opened with their usual whisper-quiet precision, 3 a.m. The city sprawled below like a circuit board, all light and geometry. Adrian loosened his tie as he stepped into the marble foyer, his footsteps the only sound in 4,200 square feet of deliberate silence. He'd been in Chicago closing a deal that should have taken 3 days, but had stretched into 5 because the sellers kept moving goalposts like children playing a game only they understood. He was tired. Actually tired, not the performative exhaustion people wore like designer labels. His shoulders ached, his eyes felt full of sand. All he wanted was a shower, 2 fingers of scotch, and 6 hours of unconsciousness. He dropped his briefcase by the door, shrugged off his jacket, walked through the living room where floor-to-ceiling windows framed the sleeping city, past the kitchen he never used, down the hallway to the master bedroom. The door was already open. That was the first wrong thing. Adrian always closed doors. Always. It was a habit born from years of living in spaces where privacy was a luxury you couldn't afford, back before the money, before the empire. When he was just a kid in a 2-bedroom apartment with walls thin enough to hear your neighbor's arguments in stereo. He stopped in the doorway. The second wrong thing was the shape in his bed. At first, his brain couldn't process it. A bundle of blankets? Something the cleaning service left behind? But no, there was breathing. Shallow, uneven. The rise and fall of a human ribcage. Adrian's hand moved toward the light switch, then stopped. Some instinct he couldn't name made him wait. Instead, he stepped closer, letting his eyes adjust to the darkness. She was small. That was his first coherent thought. Small and curled into herself like a question mark. One hand tucked under her chin, the other gripping the sheet so tightly her knuckles had gone bloodless. Dark hair spilled across his pillow. His pillow. In his bed, in his locked penthouse 40 stories above the street. The bruise on her face caught the ambient light from the windows. Fresh, maybe a day old. The kind of purple-black that came from real force, not an accident. Adrian had seen plenty of bruises in his 38 years. He knew the difference. He stood there for a long moment, doing the math. The penthouse had been empty for 5 days. Security had his biometrics on file. No one else could access this floor without authorization. So either his security system had catastrophically failed, or someone with legitimate access had let her in. The cleaning service came Mondays and Thursdays. Today was Friday, or technically Saturday morning. She'd been here at least a day, maybe 2. She stirred. A small sound escaped her throat. Not quite a word, more like a whimper. Her hand tightened on the sheet. Adrian recognized fear even in sleep. He should have called security. Should have woken her and demanded answers, should have done any number of things that made logical sense. Instead, he backed out of the room quietly, pulled the door most of the way closed, and walked to his study. The building's security feed was accessible from his personal server. He pulled up the footage, scrolling backward through the monotonous hallway outside his door. Nothing. 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 Then, there. Thursday morning, 6:47 a.m. A woman in a gray housekeeping uniform pushing a cart. She stopped at his door, glanced down the hallway, then used a key card to enter. The angle didn't show her face clearly, but the timestamp matched the building's cleaning schedule. Adrian fast-forwarded. At 7:23 a.m., she emerged. No cart, just her, walking quickly toward the service elevator, head down. She hadn't left. He switched to the penthouse's internal cameras, the ones in the living room and kitchen, but not the bedroom. He'd disabled those when he bought the place. Some privacy even he wasn't willing to sacrifice. The footage showed nothing until Thursday evening, when a figure moved through the kitchen. Quick, furtive. She'd grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge and disappeared back down the hallway. Adrian sat back in his chair. She was a housekeeper. She had access. And for some reason, she'd chosen his penthouse, his locked, empty top-floor fortress, as a hiding place. The question was, hiding from what? Or whom? He thought about the bruise again, the way she'd gripped the sheet like it was the only solid thing in a tilting world. Adrian pulled up the building's employee database, 42 people on the housekeeping staff. He filtered by Thursday's schedule, cross-referenced with the timestamp. One match. Lila Hart, 26. Hired 8 months ago. Employment record clean. No complaints, no incidents. Her employee photo showed a woman with dark eyes and a careful smile, the kind people wore when they'd learned that showing too much of yourself was dangerous. Adrian studied the image for a long time. Then he closed the laptop, poured himself that scotch he'd been craving, and went to sleep in the guest room. Morning came with the particular quality of light that only happened 40 stories up, clean, sharp, unfiltered by street-level smog. Adrian woke at 6:30 without an alarm. Old habit. You couldn't build an empire by sleeping in. He showered in the guest bathroom, dressed in fresh clothes from the closet he kept stocked in every room, and made coffee in a kitchen designed by an architect who'd clearly never cooked a meal. The machine was Italian, expensive, and required a YouTube tutorial the first time he'd used it. By 7 a.m., he was sitting in the living room with his laptop and a view of the city waking up, listening for sounds from the bedroom. Nothing. He worked through emails. A contractor in Miami needed approval on marble suppliers. His CFO wanted to discuss the quarterly projections. Someone from the Chicago deal sent a follow-up with questions that could have been answered by reading the contract they'd spent 5 days negotiating. At 8:15, he heard it, a door opening, footsteps. Hesitant. Adrian didn't look up from his screen. The footsteps stopped. He could feel her presence in the doorway to the living room, frozen, trying to decide whether to run or speak or simply evaporate into the air. "Coffee's fresh," he said, still typing. "Cups are above the sink." Silence. Long enough that he finally glanced over. She stood maybe 15 feet away, wearing the same gray uniform from the security footage. Her hair was pulled back, but strands had escaped around her face. The bruise looked worse in daylight, a sunset of purple and yellow spreading from her cheekbone to her temple. Her eyes were locked on him with an expression he recognized. She was calculating, measuring threat levels, planning escape routes. "I'm not going to hurt you," Adrian said. Simple, direct. He set the laptop aside and stood slowly, making himself as non-threatening as a 6'2" man could manage. "And I'm not calling security." "I can explain." Her voice was hoarse. When was the last time she'd spoken to someone? I wasn't. You needed somewhere safe." He said it like a fact, not a question. She blinked. Whatever response she'd expected, that wasn't it. "The coffee's not a trick," Adrian continued. "It's just coffee. You've been here 2 days. You're probably dehydrated." Lila. He knew her name, but she didn't know he knew, stared at him like he was a puzzle with missing pieces. Her hand crept to her side, where the uniform hung loose, protecting something. Ribs, maybe. Another injury hidden beneath the fabric. "Why aren't you calling security?" she asked. "Would you like me to?" "No." Fast. Almost panicked. "Then I won't." Adrian walked to the kitchen, giving her space, giving her time to breathe. He poured a second cup of coffee, black, because he didn't know how she took it, and asking felt like too much intimacy for a moment already fragile with tension. He set it on the counter between them. A offering, a buffer zone. "I'm going to ask you one question," he said, "and you don't have to answer it, but I need you to hear it, okay?" Lila nodded, barely. "Are you safe at home?" The question hung in the air like smoke. He watched her face cycle through responses, denial, anger, fear, something that might have been relief except it hurt too much to feel good. "I don't know what you mean," she said finally. "Yes, you do." Her jaw tightened. You don't know anything about me? You're right, I don't. Adrian leaned against the counter, deliberately casual. But I know what it looks like when someone's running. And I know you didn't break into my penthouse to steal anything, because if you wanted to rob me, you had 2 days to clean the place out, and you didn't take a thing. How do you cameras in the common areas, not the bedroom. I'm paranoid, not a creep. She looked down at the coffee, didn't touch it. I should go, she whispered. You should do whatever you need to do. Adrian kept his voice level. But if go means back to whoever gave you that bruise, then maybe take a minute. Drink the coffee. Think about whether that's actually what you want. You don't understand. Probably not, but I understand this. You've been hiding in a stranger's penthouse for 2 days, which means wherever you came from felt more dangerous than getting caught here. So either I'm missing something or you're in more trouble than you're admitting. Lila's hand shook, just a tremor but enough to make the uniform rustle. It's complicated, she said, as it usually is. He's not a bad person. There it was. The script. Adrian had heard variations of it before, not personally, but in stories, in news reports, in the careful way women sometimes explained away injuries that clearly weren't accidents. I didn't say he was. Adrian picked up his own coffee, giving her something to focus on besides his face. But bad people don't have a monopoly on causing harm. You don't know him. You're right. I don't. I know you even less. But I know you're standing in my kitchen at 8 in the morning, scared enough to hide, but not scared enough to run. And that tells me you're stuck between 2 bad options trying to figure out which one kills you slower. The words came out harsher than he intended. Lila flinched. Sorry, Adrian said. I shouldn't have put it like that. No. Her voice was small. You're not wrong. She finally reached for the coffee. Her hands wrapped around the cup like it was winter, and she was freezing, even though the penthouse was climate-controlled to exactly 72 degrees. How did you know I was here? She asked. Security footage. Thursday morning, you came in with the cleaning cart. Never left. Are you going to fire me? The question surprised him. Of all the things she could be worried about, criminal trespass, invasion of privacy, the sheer audacity of sleeping in a billionaire's bed, she was worried about her job. No, Adrian said. You're not fired. I broke so many rules. You broke into my home. I think rules is underselling it. He saw her face fall and added, but I'm not pressing charges either. You're not in trouble. Not for me. Then what do you want? It was a fair question. Adrian didn't have a good answer. What did he want? To help? That felt too simple, too savior complex. To fix this? He couldn't fix someone else's life. He'd built an empire on understanding limitations, his own and other people's. But there was something about the way she held herself, like she was apologizing for taking up space in the world, that made him want to tear something down. I want you to have options, he said finally. Real ones. Not the choice between bad and worse. I have options. Do you? Lila looked away. The sunrise caught the bruise on her face, made it look fresh all over again. He loves me, she said. Quiet, like she was trying to convince herself. I'm sure he does. That doesn't mean you're safe. You don't understand what it's like. He's under a lot of pressure, work stress, money problems. He doesn't mean to... She stopped, swallowed. It's not always like this. How often is not always? She didn't answer. Adrian set down his coffee. Listen, I'm not here to tell you what to do. This is your life, your choice. But I need you to understand something. You being here, hiding in my penthouse, that was a choice too. Maybe you made it without thinking. Maybe it was instinct. But some part of you knew you needed to get out, even if it was just for a couple days. That part of you is still there. It's still trying to keep you alive. I can't just leave him, her voice cracked. It's not that simple. I didn't say it was. You don't know what he's like when he's good, when things are okay. He can be really sweet. He brings me flowers. He says he's sorry. He means it. I believe you. Then why are you looking at me like that? Like what? Like I'm stupid. Like you think I'm making excuses. Adrian exhaled. I don't think you're stupid. I think you're human. And I think humans are really good at finding patterns even in chaos. because patterns feel safer than randomness. If he's sweet sometimes, then maybe you can predict when the bad times are coming. Maybe you can avoid them, control them. Lila's eyes went bright with tears she refused to let fall. But you can't, Adrian continued, gentler now. Can you? Because the rules keep changing. What worked last time doesn't work this time. You're always one step behind trying to figure out the game while he's rewriting the board. A tear escaped, just one. She wiped it away angrily. I have to go, she said. I'm supposed to work today. If I'm late, he'll... She stopped, closed her eyes. I just need to go. Okay. That's it? Just okay? What do you want me to say? Adrian asked. I can't make you stay. I can't make you leave him. All I can do is tell you that if you need a place to hide again, you have one. No questions, no judgment. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. Maybe I don't like bullies. He's not a bully. He's my husband. The word landed like a stone in water. Husband, of course. The defensive tone, the excuses, the way she talked about love like it was supposed to hurt. Adrian had been thinking boyfriend, maybe a live-in situation, but husband meant paperwork, shared finances, legal entanglement, a whole infrastructure built around the idea that leaving was betrayal. How long? He asked. 3 years? And how long has it been like this? Lila's face did something complicated. Memory and pain and a kind of arithmetic only she could calculate. It got worse about a year ago. But there were signs before, small things. I thought I could fix it, fix us. If I just tried harder, stopped making him angry. Lila. He said her name without thinking, and she looked up, startled. This isn't your fault. You know that, right? You don't know what I did. I don't care what you did. Nothing you did justifies that. He gestured to her face, her hidden ribs, the invisible catalog of injuries she carried. You sound very sure for someone who wasn't there. I'm sure. You want to know why? Because I've met men like him. Different contexts, different industries, but the same fundamental operating system. They find someone good, someone kind, someone who tries, and they slowly convince that person that love is supposed to feel like drowning, that if you just hold your breath a little longer, everything will be okay. Lila was crying now, silent tears that rolled down her face and dripped onto the gray uniform. I don't know how to leave, she whispered. You don't have to know, you just have to want to. I'm scared. You should be. Leaving is the most dangerous part. Adrian pulled a business card from his wallet. Plain, cream-colored, just his name and a phone number. He set it on the counter next to the coffee. But when you're ready, call that number. Anytime, day or night, I'll answer. And then what? Then we figure it out. She stared at the card like it might bite her. I should go, she said again. This time, Adrian didn't argue. He watched her set down the untouched coffee, watched her walk toward the door, watched her hesitate with her hand on the knob. Thank you, she said without turning around, for being kind. Lila, she looked back. You deserve more than kindness. You deserve to feel safe in your own life. She left without answering. The penthouse felt too quiet after she was gone. Adrian stood in the kitchen for a long time, looking at the coffee cup she'd abandoned, the business card she'd left behind. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Michael, it's Adrian. I need you to pull some records for me. I'm cool. Over the next 3 weeks, Adrian learned more about Lila Hart's life than she probably knew he could access. It wasn't hard. When you had money and connections, information came easy. Especially for someone who existed in the legal system, who paid taxes and had a work history and left digital footprints everywhere she went. Lila Marie Hart, née Sullivan, born in Portland, moved to the city 5 years ago for a job at a hotel. Not one of his, but a competitor's mid-range property. That's where she'd met him. Ryan Hart, 34, regional sales manager for a pharmaceutical company. Good salary, better bonuses. On paper, he looked perfect. College-educated, steady employment, no criminal record. But Adrian didn't stop at paper. He had Michael dig deeper. Employment records showed Ryan had been encouraged to resign from 2 previous positions. Both times, HR complaints from female colleagues. Nothing formal. Nothing prosecuted. Just the quiet shuffle of a problem employee out the door before things got messy. His credit report was a disaster. Maxed cards, late payments, a car repossession from 2 years ago. Lila's paycheck was barely covering their rent. Their apartment was in a building Adrian wouldn't house his worst enemy in. Fourth-floor walk-up, paper-thin walls, a landlord with 17 code violations pending. Adrian sat in his office, reading through the compiled information, feeling something cold and familiar settle into his chest. He knew men like Ryan Hart, had competed against them, negotiated with them, occasionally destroyed them when business required it. They were a type, charismatic enough to get in the door, competent enough to stay employed, but fundamentally hollow. And they dealt with that hollowness by making sure someone else felt smaller, usually someone who couldn't fight back. His phone rang. Michael. "I've got the rest," his investigator said. "You're not going to like it." "Tell me." 2 hospital visits in the last year. Both times, Lila checked in with injuries consistent with domestic violence. Broken wrist the first time, possible concussion the second. Both times she claimed she fell. Adrian's hand tightened on the phone. "Documentation?" "Medical records flag it as suspected abuse, but she refused to talk to social workers either time. Signed herself out against medical advice once she was stable." "What else?" "Neighbors have called the cops 3 times for noise complaints. Yelling, things breaking. Each time, by the time police arrived, everything was calm. Ryan answered the door, said it was just an argument, nothing physical. Lila confirmed. Cops left." "Of course they did." "There's something else," Michael said. "Ryan's been researching lawyers. Divorce attorneys, specifically. Looks like he's been shopping around comparing rates." That got Adrian's attention. "He's planning to leave her? Or he's making sure she knows he can? Control tactic, maybe? 'You leave me, I'll take everything in the divorce,' that kind of threat." Adrian leaned back in his chair, processing. Ryan wasn't just abusive, he was strategic. The hospital visits documented just enough to show a pattern, but not enough to trigger mandatory intervention. The lawyer research created leverage. The money problems made Lila dependent. This wasn't random violence, this was architecture. "Michael, I need you to do something else for me." "Name it." "Pull everything you can on Hart's employment situation. Performance reviews, client complaints, anything that might be useful." "Useful for what?" "Background." There was a pause. Michael had worked for Adrian long enough to read between lines. "Boss, I've known you 15 years. This doesn't feel like background research. This feels personal." "It's not personal, it's principle." "Uh-huh. And what principle is that?" "The one where I don't like watching people get crushed by someone who peaked in high school and never figured out how to feel big without making someone else feel small." "So it's personal." "Just get me the information, Michael." "Already on it. But Adrian, be careful. Guys like Hart, when they feel cornered, they get dangerous." "I'm counting on it." But Lila didn't call. Adrian hadn't really expected her to. In his experience, people stuck in bad situations rarely took the first exit offered. They needed time. They needed to believe escape was possible. They needed the pain to outweigh the fear. But he saw her sometimes. The building's housekeeping staff rotated floors, but Lila's schedule brought her through the penthouse level every Tuesday and Friday. Adrian started timing his work-from-home days to coincide. He didn't approach her. Didn't speak unless she spoke first. Just made sure she saw him, saw that his offer was still standing, saw that someone in the world noticed she existed. The first Tuesday, she'd startled when she saw him in the kitchen, nearly dropped her supply caddy. "I'm sorry," she'd said immediately. Automatic. "I didn't know you were home. I can come back." "You're fine. I'm just working." He gestured to his laptop. "Pretend I'm not here." She'd cleaned the living room in record time, barely breathing, and practically ran for the service elevator. The second Tuesday was better. She'd managed a small nod when she arrived. He'd nodded back. She cleaned. He worked. No conversation, but the air felt less likely to shatter. By the 4th week, she'd actually spoken first. "Can I ask you something?" Adrian looked up from his screen. "Sure." "Why haven't you reported me?" "For breaking in. You could have had me arrested. Fired at minimum, but you didn't even tell building management." "Would you like me to?" "No, but I don't understand why you didn't." Adrian considered his answer. When I was 19, I was sleeping in my car between classes and work. A professor figured it out. I don't know how, never asked, but he started leaving his office unlocked at night. Never said anything, never made a big deal about it. Just left me a key to the grad student lounge and pretended not to notice when I showed up at 6 a.m., looking like I'd slept in my clothes, which I had. Lila was quiet, listening. I asked him once why he did it, Adrian continued. He said, because everyone deserves a place to rest without fear, even if it's just for one night. So I guess I'm paying it forward. That's really kind. It's self-interest. The world works better when people help each other. Billionaires like to pretend they built everything alone, but that's fiction. We all need help sometimes. She'd smiled then. Small, but real. Thank you, she'd said. You already thanked me. I know, but I mean it more now. She'd finished cleaning and left, but something had shifted. The fear was still there. Adrian could see it in the way she held herself, the way she checked her phone compulsively, the way she flinched at sudden noises. But there was something else, too. Awareness, maybe. The beginning of understanding that the world contained more than the one narrow channel Ryan had carved for her. The break came on a Friday in October. Adrian was in a meeting when his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Can I use that favor? He knew immediately who it was. Yes. Where are you? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Work. But I need somewhere to go tonight. He thinks I'm working late. Address? She sent it. A diner on the east side. Adrian pulled up his calendar. He had drinks with investors at 7, a dinner meeting at 9. He canceled both. I'll be there at 8. Park entrance. Black sedan. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. The meeting dragged. Adrian tried to focus on the contractor's presentation about sustainable building materials, but his mind was elsewhere, running scenarios, calculating risks. If Ryan found out Lila was planning to leave, if he discovered she'd asked someone for help, things would escalate. Fast. Men like him didn't react well to losing control. Adrian needed to be careful. More importantly, he needed to make sure Lila was safe. At 7:30, he told his assistant to reschedule the rest of his day and headed to the parking garage. The diner was in a neighborhood that had been gentrifying for a decade without quite getting there. Half the storefronts were artisan coffee shops and boutiques. The other half were check-cashing places and bars with neon signs that had been flickering since the 80s. Adrian parked in the lot behind the building and waited. At 7:58, Lila emerged from the back entrance. She was wearing jeans and a jacket that was too thin for the October wind. She looked around nervously, spotted the sedan, hesitated. Adrian lowered the passenger window. It's me. She crossed the lot quickly and got in, pulling the door shut like she was afraid someone might grab it. Drive, she said. Please, just drive. Adrian pulled out of the lot and headed west, away from her neighborhood, away from anywhere Ryan might think to look. Are you okay? He asked. I don't know. Her hands were shaking. I told him I had to cover a shift for someone. He'll expect me home by midnight. And if you're not, he'll call, text. If I don't answer. She didn't finish. Do you have a plan? Not really. I just knew I couldn't go home tonight. Not after. She stopped, pulled her jacket tighter around herself. Adrian glanced over. Even in the dim light from the dashboard, he could see new bruises on her wrist. Fingerprints. What happened? Nothing. Just an argument. He grabbed me. I pulled away. It's fine. It's not fine. I know. Her voice broke. I know it's not fine. That's why I texted you. I need one night where I don't have to be scared in my own home. Is that crazy? To just want one night? It's not crazy. It's the bare minimum of what you deserve. Adrian drove in silence for a while, letting her breathe, letting the city lights blur past the windows. I have a place you can stay, he said finally. Not the penthouse, somewhere else, quiet, safe. No one will bother you. For how long? As long as you need. I can't afford. I'm not charging you rent, Lila. This isn't a transaction. Then what is it? Good question. Adrian didn't have a clean answer. Call it an investment in someone getting a fair shot, he said. You've been playing a rigged game. I'm offering you a different table. Why? You don't owe me anything. Maybe I'm tired of watching people get ground down by systems designed to crush them. Maybe I have more money than I know what to do with, and this seems like a better use than another car I won't drive. Does the reason matter? Lila was quiet for a long moment. What if I can't leave him? She whispered. What if I try and I can't go through with it? Then you come back to the apartment, stay as long as you need, and try again when you're ready. This isn't a one-time offer with an expiration date. He'll look for me. Let him look. You don't understand. He'll be furious. He'll think I'm with another man. He'll what, Lila? She didn't answer. Didn't need to. They both knew what Ryan would do. I have security, Adrian said. Good security. And I have lawyers who are very, very expensive and very, very mean. If he comes near you, if he threatens you, if he so much as sends a text that makes you uncomfortable, we document it and we bury him in legal paperwork until he wishes he'd never learned your name. That sounds expensive. It is. Good thing I can afford it. I can't let you do that. You're not letting me do anything. I'm choosing to do it. There's a difference. Lila turned to look at him, really look, like she was seeing him for the first time. Who are you? She asked. I mean, I know you're Adrian Voss. I know you own hotels. But who are you really? Why do you care about this? Adrian kept his eyes on the road. When I was building my first property, I hired a contractor who turned out to be a nightmare. Missed deadlines, cut corners, blamed everyone but himself when things went wrong. I was young, inexperienced. He ran circles around me, almost bankrupted the whole project. What happened? I had a mentor, the same professor who gave me the key to his office. He made some calls, connected me with people who knew how to handle guys like that. They didn't destroy him. They just made it very clear that his behavior had consequences. He backed off. I finished the building, learned a valuable lesson. What lesson? That power is only useful if you use it to level playing fields, not tilt them further. And that sometimes the right thing to do is step in, even when it's not your fight. This feels like it's becoming your fight. Maybe it is, Adrian admitted, but I've picked worse battles. They drove through the city, past neighborhoods that went from rough to polished and back again, following the uneven economics of urban development. Finally, Adrian pulled up in front of a converted brownstone in a quiet residential area. Trees lined the street. The buildings were old but maintained, safe. Here, he said. Lila looked up at the building. What is this place? I own it. Bought it 6 years ago, been meaning to sell it, never got around to it. Second floor apartment is empty. Furnished, utilities are on. He handed her a key. Stay as long as you want. There's food in the pantry. I had someone stock it this afternoon. Internet password is on the counter. Building has security cameras, but they're external only. You'll have privacy. Lila stared at the key like it was made of something more fragile than metal. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about staying. Say you'll give yourself permission to imagine a life where you're not afraid. That's all I'm asking. She closed her hand around the key, nodded. I should call him. Tell him I'm covering a double shift. If I don't, use the landline in the apartment. Your phone is probably trackable. She looked startled. You think he'd track my phone? I think men who hurt women usually monitor them too. Better safe than paranoid. Lila got out of the car slowly, like her body was moving through water. At the building's entrance, she turned back. Adrian? Yeah? If this goes wrong, if he finds me, if something happens, I don't want you getting hurt because of me. I'll be fine. Promise me. Promise you'll be careful. Adrian smiled, though there wasn't much warmth in it. Lila, I've been careful my whole life. It's kind of my thing. She didn't smile back. I mean it. Ryan, when he's angry, he doesn't think. He just acts. And if he thinks we're, I understand. I'll be careful. Now go inside, get some sleep, real sleep, in a place where you can lock the door and actually feel safe. She lingered for another moment, then turned and went inside. Adrian waited until he saw lights come on in the second-floor windows. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Michael, I need you to put someone on an address. 24-hour watch. If a man matching Ryan Hart's description comes within 100 feet, I want to know about it. The first night in the brownstone apartment, Lila didn't sleep. She sat on the couch with all the lights on, her phone in her hand, watching Ryan's calls come through one after another. Each buzz made her flinch. Each vibration felt like his hand on her arm, pulling her back. At 11:47 p.m., she'd called him from the landline like Adrian suggested. Told him the shift was running long, someone called in sick, they needed her until morning. Her voice had been steady, practiced. She'd learned how to lie to keep the peace. Ryan had been suspicious, but not explosive. "You better be getting overtime for this," he'd said. Background noise suggested he was at a bar. Good. When he drank with his friends, he usually came home too tired to start anything. "I am," she'd lied. "Fine, but I want you home first thing. We need to talk about the credit card bill." Her stomach had clenched. The credit card bill. Another landmine she'd have to navigate? Another accusation about spending money they didn't have on things she couldn't remember buying because he'd used her card for his purchases and then blamed her for the debt. "Okay," she'd said. "I'll be home early." She'd hung up before he could say anything else. Now it was 3 in the morning and she was staring at the ceiling of a stranger's apartment, trying to remember what silence felt like when it wasn't the pause before violence. The apartment was nice. Too nice. Hardwood floors, exposed brick, furniture that looked like it came from a catalog instead of a sidewalk. The kitchen had a gas stove and granite counters. The bedroom had a door that locked from the inside. That detail had made her cry. A bedroom door that locked. Such a small thing. But she'd stood there testing it. Click, unlock, until her hand stopped shaking and she could breathe again. Around 4 a.m., exhaustion finally dragged her under. She dreamed about running through endless hallways, doors that wouldn't open, Ryan's voice echoing from everywhere at once. She woke at 7 to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the panicked certainty that she'd overslept, that Ryan was going to be furious, that she needed to have coffee ready and breakfast made and herself invisible before he. Reality caught up slowly. She wasn't home. She was in the brownstone. She was safe. The relief lasted about 30 seconds before the guilt crashed in. What was she doing? She'd abandoned her husband, slept in another man's apartment, lied about where she was. Ryan would be worried sick. He'd probably been up all night wondering if something happened to her. Sure, he had a temper sometimes, but he loved her. He'd brought her flowers just last week. Red roses. Her favorite. Never mind that the flowers had come after he'd shoved her into the kitchen counter hard enough to leave bruises on her hip. Never mind that he'd cried and apologized and sworn it would never happen again, just like he'd sworn the time before, and the time before that. Lila sat on the edge of the bed, her phone in her hand, staring at Ryan's contact photo. They'd taken it on their honeymoon 3 years ago, back when she still believed marriage meant partnership instead of survival. She should call him. Explain, go home. Instead, she got up and took a shower. The bathroom had good water pressure, expensive soap, towels that were actually soft instead of the thin, scratchy ones from the discount store. She stood under the hot water until it ran cold, washing away the feeling of Ryan's fingers on her wrist, the memory of his voice in her ear telling her she was lucky he put up with her, that no one else would want someone so useless. When she finally emerged, wrapped in one of those soft towels, her phone was ringing again. Ryan. She answered before she could stop herself. "Where are you?" No hello, no good morning, just the edge in his voice that meant she'd already done something wrong. "I'm still at work. I told you they needed me for a double." "Bullshit. I called the hotel. They said you weren't on the schedule last night." Lila's heart stopped. "You called my work?" "Of course I called. You think I'm stupid?" "I know when you're lying, Lila. Now tell me where the hell you are before I really lose my temper." She could hear it in his voice, the shift from suspicion to rage, the way his words got clipped and cold. This was the moment, the point where she either fed the lie or told the truth, and both options led somewhere bad. "I'm at a friend's place," she said quietly. "I needed some space." Silence. The kind that felt like falling. "Space?" Ryan's voice was ice. "You needed space. From your husband. The man who provides for you, who pays for everything, who's put up with your depression and your anxiety and your constant neediness." "Ryan, no. You don't get to Ryan me. You don't get to sneak around behind my back and then act like I'm the problem." "What friend? Who are you with?" "Just someone from work." "A guy?" "No. A woman. Her name is—" "You're lying. I can hear it. You're lying to my face and you think I'm too stupid to know." His voice was rising now, getting louder, and Lila could picture him pacing their apartment, his face red, his hands clenching and unclenching. Get home. Right now. We're going to talk about this. I can't. You need what? To play games? To punish me? I made one mistake, Lila. One. And you're going to throw away our marriage over it? One mistake. That's what he called it now. Last week it had been 2 mistakes. Before that, 3 isolated incidents that didn't mean anything. The number kept changing, but the script stayed the same. Minimize. Deflect. Make it her fault for remembering. It wasn't one mistake, Lila said. Her voice was shaking. It's been a pattern, and I can't keep pretending it's normal. Oh, so now you're the victim. Is that what this is? Poor Lila, trapped with the terrible husband who works 60 hours a week so she can have a roof over her head? I work too. I pay half the rent. Half the rent with money you wouldn't have if I hadn't gotten you that job. Everything you have is because of me. Your apartment, your clothes, your entire pathetic existence. And this is how you repay me? Lila closed her eyes. She'd heard this speech before. Different words, same message. She was nothing without him. She owed him everything. Leaving was betrayal. I'm not coming home right now, she said. I need time to think. Time to think. Fine, take your time. But when you're done playing whatever game this is, don't expect me to be waiting. I've got options, Lila. Women who actually appreciate what I do for them. You're not as special as you think you are. The call ended. Lila stood there, phone in hand, waiting for the familiar guilt to swallow her whole, waiting for the voice in her head that said she was overreacting, that Ryan was right, that she was throwing away a marriage over normal couple problems. But the voice didn't come. Instead, there was just exhaustion. And underneath that, something that felt almost like clarity. She got dressed in yesterday's clothes and went to the kitchen. True to Adrian's word, the pantry was stocked. Cereal, coffee, bread, eggs, things that didn't require skill to prepare. She made toast and ate it standing by the window, looking down at a street where people walked dogs and pushed strollers and lived lives that didn't involve calculating the mood of whoever was waiting at home. Her phone buzzed, a text from Ryan. You're making a huge mistake. Don't think I won't remember this. Then another. I gave you everything and this is how you treat me? And another. Fine. Stay wherever you are. See if I care. Lila turned off her phone. The silence that followed felt like stepping out of a noise she'd stopped hearing because it had been there so long. Like the ringing in your ears after a concert, except in reverse. The absence of sound was so complete it almost hurt. She sat on the couch and cried. Not the quiet, controlled crying she'd learned to do in the bathroom while Ryan watched TV. Real crying. The kind that left her gasping and snotty and emptied out. When she was done, she felt lighter. Not better, not healed, but lighter. Around noon, there was a knock at the door. Lila froze, her heart immediately jumping to worst-case scenarios. Ryan had found her. He was outside. He was going to break down the door and drag her home and, Lila? It's Adrian, just checking in. She exhaled and opened the door. Adrian stood in the hallway holding a paper bag. He looked different in casual clothes, jeans and a sweater instead of the expensive suits she usually saw. More human, less intimidating. I brought lunch, he said, holding up the bag. Figured you might not have ventured out yet. You didn't have to do that. I know. Can I come in? She stepped aside and he entered, setting the bag on the kitchen counter. The smell of something savory filled the apartment. Thai food, he said. I didn't know what you liked, so I got a variety. Pad Thai, green curry, spring rolls. If you're vegetarian, the curry is safe. I'm not vegetarian. Lila hesitated. Ryan doesn't like Thai food, so we never, She trailed off, realizing how that sounded. 3 years of marriage and she'd forgotten what she liked because it was easier to just eat what he wanted. Adrian didn't comment on it. He just started unpacking containers, setting them on the counter like this was normal, like showing up at a runaway wife's temporary shelter with lunch was something he did every day. How was your first night? He asked. Long. I didn't sleep much. Did he call? About 50 times. Then I talked to him this morning. He knows I'm not at work. He's angry. Angry how? Threatening, mostly. Saying I'm making a mistake. That I'll regret this. Lila wrapped her arms around herself. He's not wrong. I probably will regret it. I'm already regretting it. Why? Because I'm a coward. Because I've been married 3 years and I can't even spend one night away without falling apart. Because maybe he's right and I'm overreacting and… Lila, stop! Adrian's voice was firm but not harsh. He set down the container he was holding and looked at her directly. You're not overreacting. You're having a normal response to an abnormal situation. Your brain is trying to pull you back to what's familiar because familiarity feels safer than uncertainty, even when familiarity is actively hurting you. That's not cowardice. That's neurology. You sound like a therapist. I've been to enough therapists to pick up the language. He gestured to the food. Eat something. You'll feel better with actual calories in your system. They sat at the small dining table, another thing Lila had forgotten about. She and Ryan always ate on the couch in front of the TV because sitting across from each other meant conversation, and conversation meant opportunities for Ryan to find something she'd said wrong. The pad thai was good, really good. Lila ate mechanically at first, then with actual hunger. When was the last time she'd eaten a full meal without her stomach in knots? Can I ask you something? She said after a while. Sure. Why are you doing this? And don't say it's principle or paying it forward or any of that. I want the real reason. Adrian was quiet for a moment, pushing noodles around his plate. My mother, he said finally. She was with a man like Ryan. Different details, same dynamic. I was maybe 7, 8 years old enough to know something was wrong, but too young to do anything about it. Lila set down her fork. What happened? She stayed with him for 3 years. Every time it got bad, she'd say she was leaving. Pack a bag, take me to my grandmother's house. Then she'd go back. Always went back. Until one time she didn't. She left? She died. Adrian's voice was flat, matter of fact. He put her in the hospital, said she fell down the stairs. Maybe she did. Maybe he pushed her. I'll never know. But I know she died because she didn't have a safe way out. No resources, no support, nowhere to go that he couldn't find her. Lila felt something crack open in her chest. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago, but when I saw you in my penthouse that night, I saw her. Saw someone trying to survive with no good options, and I thought, maybe I can't fix what happened to her, but I can do something about this. About you. That's a lot of pressure. I'm not asking you to be saved. I'm just offering you a runway. What you do with it is your choice. They finished eating in silence. When Adrian stood to leave, Lila walked him to the door. Thank you, she said, for the food, for this place, for everything. You keep thanking me. You don't owe me gratitude. You don't owe me anything. Still, thank you. Adrian nodded. Then, almost as an afterthought, he said, if you need anything, and I mean anything, call me, day or night. The number I gave you goes straight to my personal cell. I will. He left and Lila was alone again. But this time the silence felt different. Less like drowning, more like breathing room. She spent the afternoon doing nothing, just sitting, existing without purpose or productivity or the constant mental calculation of how to avoid setting Ryan off. It was the most peaceful she'd been in years. By evening, she'd made a decision. She wasn't going back. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. The thought terrified her. But it also felt true. Across the city, in an office that overlooked the financial district, Adrian was making decisions of his own. Michael sat across from him, a folder open on the desk between them. Ryan Hart works for Meridian Pharmaceuticals, Michael said. Regional sales. He's good at his job. I'll give him that. Hit his quotas 3 years running. But here's where it gets interesting. He slid a document across the desk. Adrian scanned it. Expense reports? Falsified. He's been padding them for at least 18 months. Nothing huge, a few hundred here, 1,000 there. Small enough to slip through accounting, big enough to add up. We're talking maybe 20 grand in fraudulent reimbursements. Adrian leaned back in his chair. Can you prove it? I can prove discrepancies. Whether they're intentional fraud or accounting errors would be for their internal investigation to determine. And if someone were to anonymously tip off Meridian's compliance department, they'd have to investigate. Company policy. And if they found evidence of fraud, they'd have to terminate him. No company wants that kind of liability. Adrian drummed his fingers on the desk. This was the line. The point where he went from helping someone escape to actively destroying someone's life. "Boss," Michael said carefully, "I've worked for you a long time. I know you don't make these calls lightly, but I have to ask, are you sure about this? Because what you're talking about isn't just leveling a playing field. It's sabotage." "Is it sabotage if he actually committed fraud?" "You know what I mean." Adrian did know. He knew exactly what Michael meant. There was a difference between exposing wrongdoing and engineering someone's downfall. The question was whether Ryan Hart deserved the distinction. "He put his wife in the hospital twice," Adrian said. "He systematically isolated her, controlled her finances, made her believe she's worthless. And when she finally got the courage to leave, he threatened her. So yeah, Michael, I'm sure. This isn't about revenge. It's about making sure he can't hurt her anymore. And if it backfires? If he figures out someone's coming after him and takes it out on Lila?" That was the risk. The calculation Adrian had been running in his head for days. If Ryan lost his job, would he blame Lila? Probably. Would he come after her? Possibly. But if Adrian played it right, by the time Ryan figured out what was happening, Lila would be protected. Legally, financially, physically. The key was timing. "Send the tip," Adrian said. "Anonymously. Use one of the investigative accounts. Make it look like it came from internal audit. You're the boss. And Michael, I want surveillance on Hart. I want to know where he goes, who he talks to, what he does. If he so much as drives past this building, I want to know about it. Already on it. I've got a guy watching his apartment. Hart's been home every night, drinks at the same bar on weekends. Creature of habit." "Good. Keep it that way." Michael gathered his files and stood to leave. At the door, he paused. "For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. It's messy and complicated and probably going to blow up in ways we can't predict. But it's right." When he was gone, Adrian sat in the darkening office, looking out at the city lights. He'd built an empire by being ruthless when necessary, by understanding that sometimes you had to break things to build something better. He'd fired people who deserved it and people who didn't. He'd crushed competitors and dismantled companies. He'd made decisions that cost people their jobs, their reputations, their security. This should have felt the same. It didn't. This felt personal. And Adrian Voss didn't do personal. He did strategy, calculation, risk assessment, but every time he thought about walking away, about letting Lila handle her own problems, he remembered the bruise on her face, the way she'd flinched at sudden movement, the quiet, desperate hope in her voice when she'd asked if she could use that favor. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. "Hello? Adrian, it's Lila. I'm sorry to call so late. I know you said any time, but it's fine. What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I wanted to tell you something. I've been thinking all day, and I've decided I'm not going back. To Ryan, to the apartment, to any of it. I'm done." Adrian felt something ease in his chest. Relief, maybe, or validation that he'd made the right bet. "How do you feel about that?" he asked. "Terrified, but also free. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense. I don't know what comes next. I don't have a plan. I don't even have clothes that aren't at the apartment, but I know I can't go back there. I won't survive it if I do." "You don't need a plan right now. You just need to stay safe and give yourself time to breathe. The rest we can figure out." "We?" "If you want help, I'm offering it. Legal help, financial help, whatever you need to make sure you can actually leave and stay gone. But it's your choice. I'm not going to push." Lila was quiet for a long moment. Adrian could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, could almost feel her working through the decision. "Okay," she said finally. "Okay. I want help. I want out. For real this time." "Then we'll make it happen. First thing Monday, I'll connect you with a lawyer, someone good. They'll walk you through divorce proceedings, protective orders if you need them, all of it. I can't afford a lawyer. You're not paying. I am. Adrian, Lila, I have more money than I'll ever spend. Let me use some of it for something that actually matters, please." Another pause. Then, so quietly, he almost didn't hear it. "Thank you." "Stop thanking me. I can't help it. You're changing my life." "You're changing your own life. I'm just holding the door open." After they hung up, Adrian sat in the dark for a while, thinking about doors and choices and the strange turns life took when you let yourself care about something other than profit margins. Then he opened his laptop and started drafting an email to the best divorce attorney he knew. The weekend passed in a strange limbo. Lila stayed in the brownstone, venturing out only for necessities, food, toiletries, a change of clothes from a thrift store because she refused to go back to the apartment for her things. Ryan called constantly, texted, left voicemails that ranged from apologetic to furious to coldly threatening. Lila listened to one, just one, where he told her she was destroying their marriage, that she was being selfish and cruel, that if she really loved him, she'd stop playing games and come home. She deleted the rest without listening. On Sunday night, she met with the lawyer Adrian had recommended, Catherine Chen. Mid-50s, sharp eyes, a handshake that felt like a contract. They met at Catherine's office, a quiet suite in a building downtown that smelled like old books and expensive coffee. Catherine had reviewed Lila's situation in advance. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Here's what we're going to do," Catherine said, pulling out a legal pad. "First, we file for divorce. Simple, no fault. You've been married less than 5 years, no kids, no shared property except the apartment lease. That's a clean split." "He'll fight it," Lila said. "He'll make it messy. Let him try." Second, we file for a protective order. You've got documentation of hospital visits, police reports from neighbor complaints. It's not ironclad, but it's something. The goal is to legally prevent him from contacting you or coming near you. Will it work? Depends on the judge. But even if we don't get the order, the act of filing sends a message. You're serious, you have legal representation, and he can't intimidate you into backing down. Lila nodded, trying to absorb it all. Third, Catherine continued, we're going to get your name off that apartment lease and any shared accounts. Bank accounts, credit cards, utilities, everything. I've seen too many cases where abusive partners use financial ties to maintain control. We're cutting those ties. What if he empties the bank account before I can? Already thought of that. We'll file an emergency motion to freeze joint assets pending divorce proceedings. It'll take a few days, but it's doable. Huh? This all sounds expensive. Catherine looked at her with something that might have been sympathy. Adrian's covering my retainer, and before you argue about it, let me save you the breath. I wouldn't have taken this case otherwise. I don't do pro bono anymore. I'm too old and too tired. But Adrian Voss called in a favor, and I owe him several, so you're stuck with me. I don't know what to say. Say you're ready to fight, because your husband is going to make this ugly, and you need to be prepared for that. I'm ready. Catherine smiled. It wasn't warm, but it was genuine. Good. Let's ruin his week. Monday morning, Ryan Hart woke up to 2 pieces of bad news. The first arrived by email at 6:47 a.m. A formal notice from Meridian Pharmaceuticals requesting his immediate presence in HR to discuss irregularities in expense reporting. The second came via certified mail, divorce papers. Ryan stood in his apartment, still in his boxers, staring at the legal documents like they were written in a foreign language. Divorce. Lila was filing for divorce. His first thought was that this was a bluff, a power play. She'd done this before, threatened to leave, packed a bag, made it to her sister's house in Portland before guilt brought her back. This was just another iteration of the same pattern, except this time felt different. This time, there were lawyers, official paperwork, legal language about irreconcilable differences and dissolution of marriage. Ryan threw the papers across the room and grabbed his phone. Lila's number went straight to voicemail. He tried 3 more times. Same result. He tried her work. The hotel receptionist said she'd called in sick. When he asked for more information, the receptionist said she wasn't authorized to give out employee details and suggested he try again later. Ryan hung up and punched the wall. His knuckles split. He didn't care. She was hiding, avoiding him, probably with that friend she'd mentioned, or maybe, the thought made his vision go red, maybe with someone else, another man, some guy who'd convinced her she deserved better, who'd filled her head with lies about him. His phone rang. Work. Mr. Hart, this is Linda from HR. We need you to come in this morning to discuss some concerns regarding your expense reports. Ryan barely heard the rest. His mind was already racing, connecting dots, looking for conspiracies. The divorce papers, the HR investigation, both on the same day. That wasn't coincidence. That was coordination. Someone was coming after him, and he had a pretty good idea who. That evening, Adrian received a call from his head of security. "We've got a problem. Ryan Hart just showed up at the hotel, the main one downtown. He's asking for Lila at the front desk." Adrian was in the middle of a conference call. He muted his line. "Is she there?" "No, but he doesn't know that. He's making a scene. Security's about to escort him out." "Make sure they document everything. Video, witness statements, the works. If he touches anyone or damages anything, I want it on record." "Copy that." Adrian unmuted his line and returned to the call, but his attention was divided. He'd expected Ryan to escalate, but not this fast. The man was unraveling quicker than projected. That was dangerous. After the call ended, Adrian drove to the brownstone. Lila answered the door looking exhausted. "He came to the hotel," Adrian said without preamble. "Made a scene. Security removed him." Lila's face went pale. "Is he still there?" "No, but he's looking for you, and he's angry. I need you to stay inside for the next few days. Don't answer the door unless you know who it is. Don't go anywhere alone." "You think he'd hurt me?" "I think he's feeling cornered, and cornered animals bite." Lila wrapped her arms around herself. "This is my fault. I should have just talked to him, explained—" "Stop." Adrian's voice was sharper than he intended. "This isn't your fault. You filed for divorce. That's legal. That's your right. How he chooses to respond is on him, not you." "He's going to be so angry." "Let him be angry. Anger can't touch you if you're safe." But even as Adrian said it, he knew it wasn't quite true. Anger could touch anyone. The question was how much damage it would do before someone stopped it. Ryan's suspension from Meridian Pharmaceuticals came through on Tuesday. Not termination, not yet, but paid administrative leave pending the outcome of their internal investigation. The email was clinical, bureaucratic, the kind of corporate language designed to avoid liability while still communicating that he was in serious trouble. He read it 3 times, sitting in his car outside the office building, his hands gripping the steering wheel hard enough to make his knuckles ache. They told him to hand over his laptop, his keycard, his company phone. Walked him out like a criminal while his colleagues pretended not to watch. 20 grand. That's what this was about. $20,000 over 18 months. Pocket change compared to what the executives were pulling in bonuses. He'd been doing them a favor, greasing wheels with clients, taking them to nice dinners, making sure deals closed. And this was how they repaid him. Except Ryan knew that wasn't the whole story. Someone had tipped them off. Someone had gone through his expense reports line by line, flagged every discrepancy, built a case. That kind of detailed investigation didn't happen randomly. Someone wanted him gone. And the timing, right when Lila filed for divorce, that wasn't coincidence either. Ryan pulled out his personal phone and scrolled through her recent calls, all unanswered. He'd tried the hotel again this morning, but they'd told him Lila had resigned, just like that. 3 years of steady employment and she quit without notice. She was planning this. All of it. The divorce, the job, disappearing. Probably had some guy lined up, someone with money who'd convinced her she could do better. The thought made his vision blur red at the edges. He drove to the apartment they'd shared, parked illegally, and took the stairs 2 at a time. The door was locked, but he had his key. Inside, everything looked the same. Her shoes by the door, her jacket on the hook, the coffee mug she always used sitting in the sink. But the closet told a different story. Her work uniforms were gone. So were her toiletries from the bathroom, the photograph of her mother from the nightstand, the small things that made the space hers. She'd come back while he was at work and taken what she needed. Hadn't left a note. Hadn't left anything except the ghost of a life they'd built together. Ryan sat on the bed and tried to think clearly through the rage. If she'd quit her job, she needed money. If she had money, someone was giving it to her. And if someone was giving her money, that same person might be responsible for the HR investigation. He pulled out his phone and called his friend Marcus, who worked in hotel management across town. "I need a favor," Ryan said. "You still got that contact in building security? The one who helped you catch that employee stealing?" "Yeah, why?" "I need to know if anyone's been asking questions about me, or about Lila. Can you find out?" "Man, I don't know. That's kind of—" "Marcus, please. My marriage is falling apart, and I think someone's actively sabotaging my life. I just need to know who." There was a pause.
I'll make a call. No promises. Thank you. Ryan hung up and stared at the wall. He needed leverage.
Information. Something he could use to either bring Lila back or make her regret leaving. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop harassing your wife. This is your only warning. Ryan stared at the message, deleted it, then threw his phone across the room hard enough to crack the screen against the wall. Across town, Adrian was having lunch with Catherine Chen in a restaurant too expensive for its own good. The kind of place where they served tiny portions on enormous plates and called it art. The protective order hearing is set for next week, Catherine said, cutting into something that might have been fish. Judge Morrison, he's fair but traditional. We'll need to present a clear pattern of abuse. Will the hospital records be enough? Combined with the police reports and witness statements from neighbors? Yes. But Lila will need to testify. She'll need to stand in front of a judge and her husband and explain why she's afraid. Adrian set down his fork. How's she holding up? Better than expected. She's scared, but she's committed. That's half the battle. Catherine paused. You should know Ryan Hart hired a lawyer, Stephen Briggs. He's a bulldog. Nasty divorce cases are his specialty. What's his angle? He's going to argue that Lila abandoned the marriage without cause, that she's mentally unstable, that the abuse allegations are fabricated to gain advantage in the divorce, standard playbook for abusers with resources. Ryan doesn't have resources. He just got suspended from his job. Catherine smiled. Funny how that worked out. I had nothing to do with that. Of course not. Just like you had nothing to do with the anonymous tip that started the investigation. Adrian didn't respond. Catherine didn't push. Anyway, she continued, Briggs is going to come after her hard. We need to be ready. That means prepping Lila for cross-examination, making sure her story is consistent, anticipating every question they'll throw at her. When? This weekend. Can you make sure she's available Saturday morning? I'll make sure. Catherine studied him for a moment. Can I ask you something off the record? Sure. Oh, why are you doing this? And don't give me the line about helping people. You're a businessman. You don't spend this kind of time and money on charity cases. So what's the real reason? Adrian considered his answer carefully. Catherine was sharp. She'd see through anything that wasn't genuine. I told you about my mother, he said finally. You did. What I didn't tell you was that after she died, I spent years angry. At her for staying. At him for being a monster. At the system that didn't protect her. At myself for being too young and powerless to do anything. That's a lot of anger for a kid to carry. It was. Still is sometimes. I built everything I have partially to prove I wasn't like him. That I could have power without using it to hurt people. Adrian pushed his plate away. But power doesn't mean much if you never use it for anything that matters. So when I saw Lila that night hiding in my penthouse, I saw a chance to actually do something, to be the intervention my mother never got. Catherine nodded slowly. That's honest. I appreciate that. Does it change anything? No. I just wanted to know if I was working for a savior complex or genuine compassion. Savior complexes crash and burn. Compassion lasts. Which one do you think this is? Too early to tell. Ask me again in 6 months. They finished lunch discussing strategy. What evidence to prioritize, which witnesses to call, how to frame Lila's story in a way that would resonate with a judge who'd probably seen 100 similar cases. When Adrian left the restaurant, his phone showed 3 missed calls from his head of security. He called back immediately. We've got a situation, Davis said. Ryan Hart's been sitting outside the brownstone for the past hour, just sitting in his car, watching the building. Adrian's jaw tightened. Is Lila inside? Yeah, she hasn't come out. I don't think she knows he's there. How did he find the address? Working on that. Could be he followed someone. Could be he's got a friend in building security who accessed visitor logs. I've got someone checking now. Get a unit over there. I want eyes on him. If he approaches the building, if he tries to get inside, I want to know immediately. Already done. 2 of my guys are parked down the block. Good. And Davis? If he tries anything, call the police. I want it on record. Copy that. Adrian stood on the sidewalk, pedestrians flowing around him like water around a stone. Ryan was escalating faster than anticipated. The job suspension should have made him more cautious, not more reckless. Unless Ryan had already decided he had nothing left to lose. That was the dangerous moment, when someone realized the old rules didn't apply anymore, that they were already falling and might as well take someone down with them. Adrian called Lila. "Don't freak out," he said when she answered, "but Ryan's outside your building." He heard her sharp intake of breath. "What?" "He's in his car, just watching. My security team is there. You're safe. But I need you to stay inside, keep the doors locked. Don't answer if he knocks."
How did he find me? I don't know yet, but we're going to find out. Adrian, I'm scared. What if he gets in? What if he's not getting in? The building has secure entry, and my guys are watching him. If he tries anything, they'll intervene and we'll have him arrested for violating the protective order. We don't have a protective order yet.
Then we'll get him for trespassing or harassment. The point is, you're not alone in this. You're not unprotected. Lila was quiet for a moment. He could hear her breathing, fast and shallow. "Okay," she said finally. "Okay, I'll stay inside. I'm coming over. Give me 20 minutes. You don't have to. I'm coming over." Adrian hung up and flagged a cab. His driver would have taken longer, and he didn't have time. When he arrived at the brownstone, Ryan's car was still parked across the street. Adrian could see him through the windshield, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the building's entrance. He looked like a man holding on to control by his fingernails. Adrian crossed the street and knocked on the driver's window. Ryan looked up, startled. Then his expression shifted to recognition, to rage. He rolled down the window. "Who the hell are you?" "Adrian Voss, I own this building, and I'm going to need you to leave. This is a public street. I can park wherever I want." "You can, but you can't harass my tenants. And if you're here because you're looking for your wife, she's filed for divorce and doesn't want to see you. So sitting outside her building is harassment." Ryan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "You're him. You're the one she's with." "I'm not with anyone. I'm her landlord, and I'm telling you to leave before I call the police." "You think you can just swoop in and steal someone's wife? Buy her off with a nice apartment and play hero?" "I think your wife left because you hurt her, repeatedly. And now you're looking for someone else to blame because taking responsibility would mean admitting what you did." Ryan's face flushed dark red. "You don't know anything about my marriage. I know she ended up in the hospital twice. I know your neighbors called the cops 3 times. I know she was so scared she hid in a stranger's apartment rather than go home to you. That's all I need to know." "She told you that? She's lying. She's always been dramatic, always exaggerating. There are medical records, Ryan, police reports, documentation. This isn't he said, she said. This is fact." Ryan opened his car door suddenly, forcing Adrian to step back. He was taller than Adrian had expected, broad-shouldered, with the build of someone who'd played football in high school and still thought it made him intimidating. "You need to stay out of my marriage," Ryan said, moving into Adrian's space. "This is between me and my wife, not you. Your wife doesn't want to be married to you anymore. That makes it no longer your marriage. It's just your problem." "You smug son of a—" "Mr. Hart," a new voice. Davis, Adrian's head of security, approaching from down the block. "I'm going to need you to step back." Ryan looked at Davis, then back at Adrian. "You brought security? For what?" "I'm just talking." "You're threatening," Davis said calmly. "And you're on private property. So you've got 2 choices. Get back in your car and leave, or we call the police and they'll make you leave. Your call." For a moment, Adrian thought Ryan might actually swing. His hands were clenched, his whole body coiled tight. But then something shifted, calculation replacing rage, and he stepped back. "This isn't over," Ryan said, looking at Adrian. "You think you can destroy my life, and there won't be consequences?" "I didn't destroy anything. You did that yourself." Ryan got back in his car. He sat there for a long moment, engine idling, staring at the building. Then he pulled away from the curb and disappeared into traffic. Davis watched him go. "That guy's a problem waiting to happen." "I know." "You want us to maintain surveillance?" 24 hours. I want to know where he goes, who he talks to, everything. And if he comes back here, I want him arrested." "Consider it done." Adrian went inside and took the stairs to Leela's apartment. She opened the door before he could knock, her face pale. "I heard voices. Was that him?" "Yeah, he's gone now." "What did he say?" Nothing important, just a man who's angry and looking for someone to blame. Adrian stepped inside. How are you holding up? I don't know, shaky. Every time my phone buzzes, I think it's him. Every noise in the hallway makes me jump. I feel like I'm losing my mind. You're not losing your mind. You're having a normal response to an abnormal situation. Again. Lila almost smiled. You keep saying that. Because it keeps being true. She sat on the couch, pulling her knees up to her chest. Catherine called. She said I have to testify at the protective order hearing, that I'll have to sit in a room with Ryan and tell a judge everything he did. You don't have to do anything you're not ready for. But if I don't testify, we won't get the order. And if we don't get the order, he can keep showing up, keep calling, keep making my life hell. That's true. So I don't really have a choice. Adrian sat in the chair across from her. You always have a choice. It might not feel like it, but you do. You can testify, or you can wait until you're stronger. You can push through, or you can take your time. Whatever you choose, I'll support it. What would you do? I can't answer that. I'm not you. I haven't lived your life. But if you had to guess, Adrian thought about it. About his mother, who never got the chance to testify because she didn't survive long enough. About all the what-ifs that haunted him. I'd testify, he said, because silence protects abusers more than victims, and because the only way to take power back is to use your voice, even when it's shaking. Lila was quiet for a long time. Outside, the city hummed with afternoon traffic. Somewhere in the building, a dog barked. Okay, she said finally, I'll do it. I'll testify. You're sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. The next few days passed in a blur of preparation. Catherine came to the brownstone with thick folders of documents, walking Lila through every question she might face. What happened on this date? Where were you when he hit you? Did you fight back? Why didn't you leave sooner? Lila answered each question, her voice getting steadier with practice. But Adrian could see the toll it was taking, the dark circles under her eyes, the way her hands trembled when she held her coffee, the weight she was losing because she couldn't stomach more than a few bites at a time. On Friday, 3 days before the hearing, Ryan's lawyer filed a motion claiming Lila had stolen marital property when she left. A list of items. Her grandmother's necklace, a laptop, $200 in cash from their joint account. Catherine laughed when she read it. This is desperation. He's trying to make her look like the bad guy because he knows he doesn't have a case. Will it work? Lila asked. Not remotely, but it'll waste our time, which is the point. He wants you tired. Wants you to give up before we even get to court. I'm not giving up. Good. Because tomorrow we're doing a full mock testimony. I'm going to grill you like Briggs will grill you, and you're going to practice not falling apart. Sound fun? Sounds terrible. It is, but it works. Saturday morning came cold and gray, the kind of November weather that felt like the city was mourning something. Lila sat in Catherine's office while the lawyer paced back and forth, firing questions. Mrs. Hart, you claim your husband hit you on the night of June 14th. Can you describe exactly what happened? He came home from a work event. He'd been drinking. We got into an argument about money. What kind of argument? He said I was spending too much. I showed him the bank statement. Most of the charges were his. He got angry. And then what? He pushed me. I fell against the counter. Hit my head. Did you go to the hospital? Not that night. I was scared. But the next day, when the headache wouldn't go away, I went to urgent care. And what did you tell the doctor? That I fell. Why did you lie? Lila hesitated. Because I was embarrassed. Because I thought if I told the truth, they'd make a big deal out of it. That Ryan would find out and get angry. Catherine stopped pacing. That's good. That's honest. But Briggs is going to push harder. He's going to make it sound like you're lying now, that the fall story was true, and you're only claiming abuse to gain advantage in the divorce. How do you respond? I don't know. Yes, you do. Think. Why would you lie about falling if the truth was that he hit you? Lila closed her eyes. Because the truth was dangerous. Because telling made it real. Because as long as I pretended it was an accident, I could pretend my marriage was normal. Better. Use that. Catherine sat down across from her. Lila, listen to me. Briggs is going to try to rattle you. He's going to paint you as vindictive, unstable, calculating.
His job is to make the judge doubt your story. So your job is to stay calm, tell the truth, and trust that the evidence speaks for itself. Can you do that? I think so. Not good enough. Can you do it? Yes. Louder. Yes, I can do it. Catherine smiled. That's the voice I need to hear on Monday. Now let's run it again from the top. They practiced for 4 hours. By the end, Lila's voice was hoarse but steady. She'd stumbled through some answers, but Catherine said that was fine. Perfectly polished testimony looked rehearsed. Judges trusted humanity more than performance. When they were done, Adrian drove Lila back to the brownstone. She was quiet in the passenger seat, staring out the window. You did well today, he said. I cried twice. You're allowed to cry. You're testifying about trauma, not delivering a business presentation. Catherine said Briggs is going to make me look like I'm lying. He's going to try, but you've got something he doesn't. What? The truth, and medical records, and police reports, and a judge who's seen this exact pattern 100 times. Lila turned to look at him. Do you really think we'll win? Adrian wanted to say yes, wanted to promise her that justice was certain, that the system would protect her, that everything would work out. But he'd learned a long time ago that lying to make someone feel better was just another form of control. I think we've got a strong case, he said instead. I think Catherine is excellent at her job, and I think you're braver than you give yourself credit for. That doesn't guarantee a win, but it gives us a fighting chance. And if we lose, then we appeal. We file for a different order. We keep trying until something sticks. There's always another move, Lila. You just have to be willing to keep playing. She nodded, but didn't look convinced. That night, Ryan made his second mistake. He showed up at the brownstone at 11:30, drunk enough to be reckless, but sober enough to know what he was doing. He didn't have a key to the building, so he started banging on the door, shouting Lila's name. Davis's surveillance team called Adrian immediately. By the time the police arrived, Ryan was sitting on the front steps, head in his hands, looking pathetic instead of dangerous. The officers took statements, reviewed the security footage, warned Ryan that he was in violation of an impending protective order, and that showing up again would result in arrest. Ryan left in a cab, giving Adrian one last look that promised this wasn't over. Inside the apartment, Lila sat on the floor with her back against the wall, phone in her hand, replaying a voicemail Ryan had left an hour earlier. You can't hide forever. You think some rich guy is going to protect you. He's just using you. When he's done, you'll have nothing. No husband, no money, no one. You'll be alone. And you'll realize you threw away the only person who actually loved you. The message went on for 3 minutes. Lila had listened to it 5 times, each word digging deeper. When Adrian arrived, she was still on the floor, staring at nothing. He's right, she said without looking up. I'm going to end up alone. I'm going to lose everything. You're not losing everything. You're losing him. That's not a loss. Easy for you to say. You're not the one who's about to be a divorced, unemployed mess with no money and no prospects. Adrian sat down beside her on the floor. You're right. It's easy for me to say because I'm not living it, but that doesn't make it less true. How can you be so sure? Because I've seen what being with him cost you. I've watched you shrink yourself to fit into whatever shape he needed, and now I'm watching you start to expand again. That's not nothing, Lila. That's everything. She leaned her head back against the wall. I'm so tired. I know. I don't know if I can do this. You can. And even if you can't, you will. Because the alternative is going back, and you've already decided you won't survive that. Lila turned to look at him, really look at him, and for the first time Adrian saw something other than fear in her eyes. It was fragile, barely there, but it was real. Hope. Promise me something, she said. What? Promise that if I do this, if I testify and fight and get through the divorce, that it'll be worth it, that my life will actually be better on the other side. Adrian wanted to promise, wanted to guarantee her a happy ending tied up with a bow, but he couldn't. I can't promise that, he said, because I don't know what your life will look like 6 months from now, but I can promise that it'll be yours, fully yours, and that's worth fighting for. Lila nodded slowly. Then she did something that surprised him. She reached over and took his hand. Her palm was cold, her grip uncertain. Thank you, she said.
for all of this, for not giving up on me even when I was ready to give up on myself. Adrian squeezed her hand gently. You never gave up. You're still here. That's the opposite of giving up. They sat there for a while, two people on a hardwood floor at midnight, holding on to something fragile and unnamed. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, for just a moment, everything was still. Sunday passed quietly. Lila spent most of it preparing, reviewing her testimony, trying to steel herself for what was coming. Adrian checked in twice, brought food she didn't eat, and made sure security was still monitoring Ryan's movements. Ryan had gone to ground. No more calls, no more showing up drunk. He was either planning something or he'd finally accepted defeat. Adrian didn't believe it was the latter. Monday morning arrived with brutal clarity. The protective order hearing was scheduled for 10 a.m. Catherine picked up Lila at 8:30, giving them time to review one last time. Adrian met them at the courthouse. It was downtown, all marble and fluorescent lighting, the kind of building designed to make people feel small. Ryan was already there with his lawyer, Stephen Briggs. They sat on a bench outside the courtroom, heads together, strategizing. When Ryan saw Lila, his expression shifted through several emotions: hurt, anger, something that might have been longing if you were generous enough to call it that. Lila looked away first. Don't engage, Catherine murmured. Don't even look at him. He wants a reaction. Don't give him one. They waited. 10 minutes. 20. Finally, the bailiff called them in. Judge Morrison was exactly what Catherine had described. Mid-60s, tired eyes, the air of a man who'd seen every permutation of human dysfunction and was no longer surprised by any of it. The hearing began with procedural language, motions and countermotions, legal framework that made everything feel abstract and distant. Then Catherine called Lila to testify. Lila walked to the witness stand like she was walking to her own execution. Her hands shook as she placed them on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Catherine started gently, establishing basic facts. How long they'd been married, when the abuse started, the pattern of escalation. Then Briggs stood up for cross-examination. Mrs. Hart, he said, voice dripping with false sympathy, you claim my client assaulted you on multiple occasions. Is that correct? Yes. And yet you stayed with him for 3 years. Why is that? I loved him. I thought it would get better. Or perhaps there was no abuse, and you're fabricating these claims to gain advantage in your divorce? Catherine objected. The judge sustained. Briggs tried again. Mrs. Hart, you went to the hospital twice for injuries you claim were caused by my client. Both times you told medical staff you fell. Were you lying then, or are you lying now? Lila's voice wavered. I was lying then. I was scared. Convenient. So we're just supposed to believe that you lied to doctors, to police officers, to everyone who tried to help you, but now suddenly you're telling the truth. I am telling the truth. Are you? Or are you a woman who left her marriage, found a wealthy benefactor, and is now trying to destroy my client's reputation to justify your abandonment? That's not... I didn't... Mrs. Hart, isn't it true that you're currently living in an apartment owned by Adrian Voss? Catherine was on her feet. Objection? Relevance. It speaks to credibility, Your Honor. Mrs. Hart claims to be a victim, but she's being financially supported by a billionaire. That suggests an alternative narrative. Judge Morrison looked at Lila. You may answer the question. Lila took a breath. Yes. Mr. Voss is helping me because I had nowhere else to go. How convenient. And in exchange for this help, what exactly are you providing him? The implication was clear. Catherine objected again, more forcefully this time. The judge warned Briggs about his line of questioning, but the damage was done. Lila's face had gone pale. Her hands were shaking visibly now. Briggs pressed harder. Mrs. Hart, you claim to be afraid of my client, and yet you initiated this divorce. You moved out without warning. You've been avoiding all contact. Does that sound like someone who's afraid, or someone who's manipulating the system? I'm afraid because, yes or no, Mrs. Hart, are you afraid of my client right now in this courtroom with security present and a judge watching? Lila looked at Ryan for the first time since they'd entered. He was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. Yes, she whispered. I'm afraid of him. You'll need to speak up. Yes, I'm afraid of him. I'm always afraid of him. And then, to everyone's surprise, including her own, Lila started talking, really talking. Not the practiced testimony Catherine had coached her through, but raw, unfiltered truth. I'm afraid when I hear his footsteps. I'm afraid when his voice changes tone. I'm afraid when he drinks, when he doesn't drink, when he's happy, when he's angry. I'm afraid of saying the wrong thing, wearing the wrong clothes, spending too much money, not having dinner ready on time. I'm afraid of existing in a way that might upset him. And I know that sounds crazy, I know it sounds like I'm exaggerating, but it's the truth. Living with him was like walking through a minefield where the mines moved and no map could save me. The courtroom was silent. Briggs tried to interrupt, but Lila kept going. You want to know why I lied to the doctors? Because telling the truth meant admitting my marriage was broken. Because I was ashamed. Because Ryan always apologized afterward, and I wanted to believe the apologies more than I wanted to believe the violence. You want to know why I'm accepting help from Mr. Voss? Because my husband controlled all our money, took my paychecks, left me with nothing. Because when I tried to leave, I had nowhere to go and no resources to get there. And you want to know why I'm doing this? Because I finally realized that being alone and scared is still better than being married and terrified. She was crying now, but her voice was steady. Judge Morrison leaned forward. Mr. Briggs, do you have any further questions? Briggs looked at Lila, then at Ryan, then back at the judge. No, Your Honor. Then we'll take a brief recess. The bailiff called a 15-minute break. Lila practically ran from the witness stand. Catherine followed her into the hallway where Adrian was waiting. I screwed up, Lila said, pacing. I went off script. I said too much. You were perfect, Catherine said. I cried. I lost control. You were human. That's what Morrison needed to see. Not a rehearsed performance. Real fear, real pain. You gave him that. Adrian didn't say anything. He just handed Lila a bottle of water and let her breathe. When they went back inside, Judge Morrison had made his decision. Having reviewed the evidence and heard testimony from both parties, I'm granting a temporary protective order. Mr. Hart is prohibited from contacting Mrs. Hart directly or indirectly, from coming within 500 feet of her residence or place of employment, and from any form of harassment or intimidation. This order is effective immediately and will remain in place pending the final divorce decree. Ryan stood up. Your Honor, that's not... Mr. Hart, I suggest you listen to your lawyer and sit down. You've been found credible in your denials, but the evidence of a pattern of controlling and intimidating behavior is sufficient to warrant protection. If you violate this order, you will be arrested. Do you understand? Ryan sat down, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. The judge continued with procedural details, court dates, compliance requirements, consequences for violation. Adrian barely heard any of it. He was watching Lila, watching the way her shoulders slowly unhunched, the way she started breathing normally again. They'd won. Not completely, not finally, but enough. When they left the courthouse, Ryan was still inside with his lawyer. Catherine advised against lingering. He'll be angry, she said. More angry than before. Men like him don't take well to being told no by a judge, so you need to be extra careful for the next few weeks. No routines, no predictable patterns. And if he contacts you, even indirectly, you call the police immediately. I will, Lila said. I mean it. One violation and he goes to jail. Don't give him a second chance. I won't. Adrian drove Lila back to the brownstone. They didn't talk much. She stared out the window, processing everything that had happened. Thank you, she said finally, for being there, for making this possible. You did it yourself. No, without you, I'd still be in that apartment, convincing myself it wasn't that bad. Or worse. Adrian didn't argue. Some things you couldn't logic away. When they reached the brownstone, Lila got out but hesitated before going inside. Adrian? Yeah? What happens now? I mean, after the divorce is final, after all this is over, what do I do? Whatever you want, that's the whole point. I don't even know what I want. It's been so long since I let myself want anything. Then start small. Figure out what you like. Coffee or tea? Morning or night? Quiet or noise? Build from there. Lila smiled. It was small and uncertain, but it was real. I think I want to be the kind of person who isn't afraid all the time. You're already becoming that person. You just haven't noticed yet. She went inside. Adrian waited until he saw lights come on in her apartment before driving away. He had work to do, meetings to take, deals to close, an empire to run. But for the first time in a long time, the empire felt like something other than an end in itself. It felt like a tool, one he could use to actually matter. The first violation came 3 days after the protective order was issued. Not from Ryan directly, he was smarter than that, but from his mother. Lila's phone rang at 7 in the morning. She'd been awake for an hour already, unable to sleep past dawn since the courthouse. When she saw the name on the screen, her first instinct was to ignore it. But Margaret Hart had always been kind to her, had sent birthday cards and included her in family dinners back when things were still pretending to be normal. She answered, "Lila, honey?" Margaret's voice was thick with concern. "Ryan told me what happened. I can't believe you're doing this to him." Lila felt her stomach drop. "Margaret, I can't talk to you about this. He's devastated. Absolutely devastated. He loves you so much, and you've just thrown it all away over some argument. Marriage takes work, sweetheart. You can't just run away when things get hard. It wasn't just an argument. Ryan said you're claiming he hit you. That's not the boy I raised. He would never lay a hand on a woman. His father and I taught him better than that." The implicit accusation was clear. Lila was lying, making things up, being dramatic. "I'm sorry, Margaret, but I really can't discuss this with you. The court said, the court doesn't know my son like I do." Like you should, if you'd given the marriage a real chance instead of running to some rich man who's clearly filling your head with nonsense. Lila's hand started shaking. "I have to go." "Wait, please. Just talk to him. Just once. Let him explain. He's sorry for whatever happened, honey. He wants to make it right. Isn't that worth something?" "Goodbye, Margaret." Lila hung up and immediately called Catherine. "She called you directly?" Catherine's voice was sharp. "Did she mention Ryan?" "She said he told her about the divorce, that he's devastated, that I should talk to him." "That's a violation. He's using a third party to contact you. Did you record the call?" "No, I didn't think to." "It's okay. Write down everything she said while it's fresh. Exact words if you can remember them. We'll file a motion to show Ryan's in contempt." "Will that really help?" "It establishes a pattern, shows he's not taking the order seriously, and it gives us ammunition if he tries anything else." After she hung up with Catherine, Lila sat at the kitchen table and wrote out every word of Margaret's call. Her handwriting was shaky. She kept having to stop and breathe. The phone rang again. Different number. She didn't recognize it. Against her better judgment, she answered. "You stupid bitch!" A woman's voice, younger than Margaret's. "You think you can destroy a man's life and just walk away?" Lila's breath caught. "Who is this?" "Ryan's sister. And I want you to know that everyone sees through your lies. You're a gold digger who found a better meal ticket. That's all this is." "You broke up our family. You humiliated my brother in court. And for what? So you could play victim and cash in? We all know what you are." The call ended. Lila sat there, phone in hand, feeling like the walls were closing in. This was the thing nobody talked about when they talked about leaving. It wasn't just leaving one person. It was leaving an entire ecosystem of people who'd chosen him, who needed him to be the good guy because the alternative was too uncomfortable. She called Adrian. "Ryan's family is calling me," she said when he answered, tried to keep her voice level, failed. "His mother, his sister, they're saying I'm lying, that I'm destroying him. Catherine said it's a violation, but I can't keep doing this. I can't keep getting attacked from all sides." "Where are you?" "The apartment." "Stay there. I'm coming over." "You don't have to. I'm coming over." 20 minutes later, Adrian was sitting across from her at the kitchen table, listening as she replayed both conversations from memory. "Change your number," he said when she finished. "Today. Catherine can notify the court and Ryan's lawyer that you have a new number and that any contact attempts through third parties will be documented and prosecuted." "But what about work? What about people who need to reach me?" "You're not working right now, and anyone who needs to reach you can go through Catherine or me. The point is to cut off all the avenues he's using to get to you." "It feels like hiding." "It is hiding, and there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is make yourself a harder target." Lila wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. It had gone cold. His sister called me a gold digger, said I found a better meal ticket. And you're worried there's truth to that. It wasn't a question. Lila looked up, surprised. I'm not worried there's truth to it, she said slowly. I know there isn't, but the fact that they can say it and make it sound plausible, that bothers me. Because from the outside, I can see how it looks. Wife leaves husband, moves into apartment owned by rich guy, files for divorce. It's not a good look. Who cares how it looks? I do. I don't want people thinking that I used you, that this is some kind of transaction. Adrian leaned back in his chair. Lila, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to actually hear it. You don't owe anyone an explanation for saving your own life. Not Ryan's family, not strangers, not even yourself. You left because staying was killing you. Everything that came after, the apartment, the lawyers, the help, those are just tools. They don't change the fundamental fact that you made a choice to survive. And anyone who judges you for that can go to hell. She almost smiled. That's very black and white. Sometimes things are black and white. This is one of those times. You really believe that? I do. And eventually you will too. Lila wanted to believe him, wanted to inhabit the certainty he seemed to carry so easily, but certainty felt like a luxury she couldn't afford yet. They changed her number that afternoon. Catherine sent official notification to Ryan's lawyer, along with documentation of the contact attempts and a motion for contempt. By evening, Lila had a new phone with a new number that only 5 people knew. It should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like another thing taken away, another piece of her old life erased. That night, she dreamed about her wedding. Not the real one, that had been small, civil, rushed, but some idealized version where everything was white and gold and perfect. In the dream, Ryan stood at the altar smiling, and when she reached him, he grabbed her wrist hard enough to bruise and whispered, "You're never leaving me." She woke up gasping, sweat-soaked, her heart trying to punch through her ribs. The clock said 3:15. Too late to call anyone. Too early to pretend morning had arrived. Lila got up and went to the window. The street below was empty except for a cab idling at the corner. Normal city sounds. Normal city night. She was safe. She kept telling herself that. She was safe. But safety didn't erase the years of not being safe. Didn't reprogram her nervous system to stop flinching at shadows. Her new phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. Can't sleep either. Coffee place on 5th opens at 5 if you want company. She almost cried. The fact that he knew, that he'd somehow anticipated the insomnia and the spiraling thoughts, it was too much. How did you know I was awake? Wild guess. Plus I saw your light on from the street. You're outside? Couldn't sleep. Went for a walk. Ended up here. Not stalking, I promise. Just restless. Lila looked out the window again. There he was, standing under a streetlight, phone in hand, looking up at her building. Give me 10 minutes. She got dressed, pulled her hair into something resembling order, and went downstairs. The November air hit her like cold water, shocking and clarifying. Adrian was still standing where she'd seen him, hands in his coat pockets. You really do have insomnia, she said. Chronic. Had it since I was a kid. Tried everything. Pills, meditation, sleep studies. Nothing works. I've just learned to function on 4 hours. That sounds exhausting. You get used to it. They started walking. No destination, just movement. The city at 4 a.m. was a different animal. Quieter, stranger, like someone had turned down the volume on the world. Do you ever regret it? Lila asked after a while. Getting involved in all this? It would have been easier to just call the cops that first night and wash your hands of me. Easier isn't always better. That's not an answer. Adrian thought about it. No, I don't regret it, but I underestimated how complicated it would get. I thought it would be simple. Give you resources, help you leave, problem solved. I didn't account for how messy human emotions are. How leaving someone is both the hardest and easiest thing in the world. You sound like you've done it. Left someone? Yeah, different circumstances. But I know what it's like to walk away from something that's hurting you and still feel guilty about it. Lila glanced at him. What happened? Business partner, early in my career. We built my first property together. He was brilliant, charismatic, terrible with money and worse with ethics. Kept cutting corners, making promises he couldn't keep. I knew if I stayed, we'd both go down. So I bought him out and walked away. And you felt guilty? For years. He called me a traitor, said I'd stolen his dream. And part of me believed him because we had built something together, even if that something was fundamentally unstable. What changed? Time. Distance. Watching him crash and burn on his next 3 projects. Eventually I realized I hadn't betrayed him. I'd refused to drown with him. There's a difference. Lila understood what he was really saying, that leaving someone who's sinking doesn't make you a traitor. It makes you a survivor. They walked past closed storefronts and all-night diners, past homeless people sleeping in doorways and delivery trucks making their pre-dawn rounds. The coffee place on 5th was just opening when they arrived, the smell of fresh grounds and baking bread spilling onto the sidewalk. They ordered, found a table by the window, watched the city wake up in increments. "Can I ask you something?" Lila said. "Always." "Why don't you have anyone? I mean, you're successful, She hesitated. "You're a good person. Why are you alone at 4 in the morning drinking coffee with your charity case instead of home with someone who actually matters?" Adrian smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You matter. And I'm alone because I'm good at business and terrible at people. I can negotiate billion-dollar deals and manage hundreds of employees, but I can't do small talk at parties. Can't do casual relationships that don't mean anything. Can't pretend to care about things I don't care about." "That sounds lonely." "It is. But it's honest. And I'd rather be honestly lonely than fake connected." Lila sipped her coffee. It was too hot and too strong and exactly what she needed. "I think I'm starting to understand that," she said. "The honest part. I spent 3 years faking connection with Ryan, pretending we were happy, pretending it was normal. And now that I'm out, even though I'm terrified and broke and don't know what comes next, at least it's real. At least I'm not lying to myself anymore. That's progress. Doesn't feel like progress. Feels like chaos. Chaos is underrated. Sometimes you have to break everything before you can build something better." They stayed until the morning rush started, until the coffee shop filled with people in suits grabbing lattes on their way to jobs that paid well but meant nothing. Then they walked back to the brownstone through streets that had transformed from empty to crowded in the span of 2 hours. At the door to her building, Lila turned to Adrian. "Thank you for the coffee, for the walk, for not making me feel crazy for being awake at 3 in the morning. Anytime. Literally, I'm always awake at 3 in the morning." She laughed. Actually laughed. It felt strange, like a muscle she hadn't used in years. Inside, she slept for 4 hours straight. No dreams, no panic, just deep, dark nothing. The contempt hearing was scheduled for the following week. Catherine filed the motion with documentation of Margaret's call, the sisters' harassment, and a pattern of Ryan using proxies to violate the protective order. Ryan's lawyer argued it was overzealous enforcement, that family members expressing concern didn't constitute violation, that Lila was being paranoid and vindictive. Judge Morrison disagreed. "Mr. Hart, you were explicitly ordered to have no contact with your wife, directly or indirectly. Your mother calling to encourage reconciliation is indirect contact. Your sister calling to harass and intimidate is indirect contact. This court takes protective orders seriously. One more violation and you'll spend 30 days in county jail. Do you understand?" Ryan nodded. His face was blank, but Lila could see the rage underneath, the way his jaw clenched, the way his hands gripped the table edge. She'd seen that look before, usually right before things got bad. After the hearing, Catherine pulled her aside. "He's going to escalate," she said bluntly. That threat of jail time? It didn't scare him. It humiliated him. And humiliated men are dangerous men. So what do I do? Everything you're already doing. Stay vigilant. Don't go anywhere alone. Keep your phone charged. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. That's not very reassuring. It's not meant to be. It's meant to keep you alive. Lila left the courthouse feeling like she was carrying weights on her shoulders. Adrian was waiting outside. How'd it go? He got warned. Catherine thinks he's going to escalate. She's probably right. You're both very comforting. Adrian smiled grimly. I'm not here to comfort you. I'm here to keep you safe. Sometimes those are different things.
They drove back in silence.
Lila stared out the window, watching the city blur past. Somewhere out there, Ryan was planning his next move, and she was just waiting for it to land. The escalation came on a Tuesday. Lila had ventured out for the first time in days, just to the grocery store 2 blocks away, just to feel like a normal person doing normal things. She'd made a list, planned her route, told Adrian where she was going. She was in the produce section, trying to remember if she liked apples or if that was just something Ryan liked and she'd absorbed by proximity when she felt it. That prickling awareness, the sense of being watched. She turned. Ryan was standing at the end of the aisle, just standing there, not approaching, not speaking, just watching her with an expression she couldn't read. Lila's heart stopped. Her first instinct was to run. Her second was to scream. She did neither. Instead, she pulled out her phone and called 911. There's a man violating a protective order. He's in the grocery store at 5th and Morrison. He's not approaching me, but he's watching me, and I'm scared. The operator asked questions. Lila answered while staring at Ryan. He didn't move, didn't come closer, just stood there making his point. I can find you. I know where you go. You're not as safe as you think. Security arrived first, then police. By the time they got to the produce section, Ryan was gone. He was right there, Lila said, pointing. Her voice was shaking. He was standing right there watching me. The officers took her statement, reviewed security footage. Sure enough, there was Ryan, clear as day, standing in the produce section while his estranged wife called the police. We'll pick him up, one of the officers said. This is a clear violation. He'll be arrested. And then what? He'll be arraigned. Might get bail, might not, depending on the judge. So he could be out by tomorrow. The officer's expression was sympathetic but unhelpful. Possibly, but he'll know we're watching. That's got to count for something. It didn't count for much. Lila abandoned her groceries and called Adrian from the sidewalk outside. He was there, in the store, just watching me. Are you okay? No, I'm really not okay. He could have been following me. He could have been waiting outside the apartment. How did he know I'd be there? He's been watching the building. My security spotted him twice last week just driving past. He's tracking your patterns. Then what do I do? I can't stay inside forever. I can't live like this. I know. Come back to the brownstone. We'll figure this out. Lila walked back, looking over her shoulder every few steps. The street felt hostile, every stranger a potential threat. When she got inside, Adrian was already there with Davis. We need to move you, Davis said without preamble. He knows this address. He's demonstrated he's willing to violate the order. The brownstone isn't safe anymore. Move me where? I have a property outside the city, Adrian said. Small town, 45 minutes north. It's empty right now, quiet. He won't find you there. I can't just leave. I have the divorce hearing in 2 weeks. You can come back for the hearing, but right now he's escalating faster than we anticipated. And I'd rather have you bored and safe than accessible and in danger. Lila wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could handle this. But the truth was, she couldn't. She was exhausted and terrified and running out of fight. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, I'll go. They packed what little she'd accumulated, some clothes, toiletries, the few possessions she couldn't leave behind. It took less than an hour. Her whole life fit in 2 suitcases. By evening, they were on the highway heading north. Adrian drove. Davis followed in a second car. Lila watched the city shrink in the rearview mirror until it disappeared entirely. The property turned out to be a small house on the edge of a town that barely qualified as a town. 1 main street, a diner, a gas station, not much else. The house itself was modern, all glass and clean lines, completely at odds with the rural setting. I bought it as an investment, Adrian explained, unlocking the front door. Planned to flip it, never got around to it. Inside was sparse but comfortable. Furniture but no personal touches. A kitchen that worked but felt unused. It was the kind of place that existed in neutral, waiting for someone to make it mean something. You'll be safe here, Davis said, doing a perimeter check. I've got cameras on all the access roads. If anyone comes within a mile, we'll know.
What about food? What about... I don't have a car. I can't just stay locked inside for 2 weeks. There's a grocery delivery service. Internet's good. You've got my number and Adrian's number. If you need anything, call. It felt like exile. like witness protection without the crime. After Davis left, Adrian stayed. They ordered dinner from the one restaurant in town that delivered, Chinese food that was acceptable but forgettable. Ate it sitting on the floor because the dining table felt too formal. "I'm sorry," Adrian said after a while. "For what?" "For underestimating him. I thought the protective order would slow him down, that the threat of jail would make him back off. I was wrong. You didn't make him violent. You didn't make him obsessive. That's not on you." Still, I should have seen this coming. Lila set down her container of lo mein. "Can I tell you something? And I need you to not take it the wrong way." "Okay. I'm angry at you." Adrian looked surprised. "Okay. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you keep trying to fix everything, and some things can't be fixed. Ryan can't be fixed. My marriage can't be fixed. I can't be fixed. And you standing there with all your resources and good intentions just reminds me how broken everything is. I'm not trying to fix you, but aren't you? Isn't that what this is? The apartment, the lawyers, now this house. You're trying to make everything okay, and it's not going to be okay. Not for a long time. Maybe never." Adrian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. "You're right. I am trying to fix things. Because fixing is what I know how to do. I see a problem, I solve it. But you're not a problem. And this, you getting out, rebuilding your life, that's not something I can solve for you. All I can do is give you space and time and resources. What you do with them is yours. So why do you care? Really? Strip away the stuff about your mother and paying it forward. Why do you actually care what happens to me?" Adrian looked at her. Really looked. And for the first time, Lila saw something other than controlled competence in his expression. "Because watching you fight reminds me why I built all of this in the first place," he said quietly. "I spent years accumulating money and power, and somewhere along the way I forgot it was supposed to mean something, supposed to be for something. And then you showed up in my penthouse, terrified and brave at the same time, and I remembered, this helping you, it's the first thing I've done in years that actually matters." Lila felt something crack open in her chest. Not attraction, not romance, something harder to name. Recognition, maybe, of one lonely person seeing another. "Thank you," she said, "for being honest. You asked for honest. I know, but people don't usually give it." They finished eating in silence that felt different than before, less awkward, more settled. When Adrian left, Lila stood in the doorway and watched his taillights disappear down the long driveway. Then she went inside, locked the door, and sat in the quiet house trying to remember what silence used to feel like before it became threatening. Her phone buzzed. A text from Catherine. "Ryan was arrested 2 hours ago. Arraignment tomorrow morning. I'll keep you posted." Lila read the message 3 times. He was in jail. Actually in jail. Because he'd violated the order. Because he'd been caught. She should have felt relief. Victory, even. Instead, she felt nothing. Just a vast, empty nothing where emotion should have been. She walked through the house, turning on every light, making the space bright and sharp-edged and impossible to hide in. Then she sat on the couch and waited for dawn, because sleeping felt like giving up consciousness, and she wasn't ready to let go yet. Outside, the night was full of sounds she didn't recognize. Wind through trees, animals moving through underbrush, the absence of sirens and traffic, and all the white noise that city living provided. It was peaceful. It was terrifying. It was the first night of whatever came next. The arraignment happened without Lila. Catherine attended, called her afterward with the details. "Judge set bail at $50,000, Catherine said. "Ryan's family posted it. He's out." Lila had been standing at the kitchen window, watching birds she couldn't name pick at the frozen ground. At Catherine's words, her hand tightened on the phone. "He's out already?" "With conditions. Electronic monitoring. Can't leave the county. Has to check in with a probation officer twice a week. And the protective order stands with enhanced penalties. If he violates again, he goes back to jail immediately. No bail." "That didn't stop him last time." "I know, but it's the best we could do. The system isn't built for prevention. It's built for reaction." After they hung up, Lila stood at the window for a long time. The house felt smaller knowing Ryan was out there somewhere, even if somewhere was 45 minutes away and monitored by an ankle bracelet.
She spent the next week in a strange limbo, days blurred together. She woke when light came through the windows, slept when exhaustion won. Ate because her body required fuel, not because she was hungry. The town was too small to get lost in, so she stayed inside mostly, venturing out only for walks that took her down empty roads where the only witnesses were bare trees and the occasional passing car. Adrian called every day, sometimes twice, never pushing, just checking in. She appreciated it and resented it in equal measure, appreciated that someone cared, resented that she needed someone to care. "How are you doing?" he'd ask. "Fine," she'd lie. "Lila, I don't know. I'm here. I'm breathing. That's about all I can manage." That's enough. On the 8th day, she ventured into town properly. The diner Catherine had mentioned sat on Main Street, a relic from the 50s with chrome trim and vinyl booths. Lila ordered coffee and pie because that's what you ordered in diners, and sat by the window watching people who had normal lives do normal things. An older woman in the next booth leaned over. "You're new here." It wasn't a question. Lila nodded. "Visiting or staying?" "I don't know yet." The woman smiled. "That's how it starts. I came here for a weekend 20 years ago. Never left." "Why not?" "Because nobody here cares who you were before. They only care who you are now. That's rare." Lila thought about that, about being someone new, about shedding the identity Ryan had built for her, the anxious wife, the apologetic presence, the woman who took up as little space as possible. "What if you don't know who you are now?" she asked. "Then you get to figure it out. Most people don't get that chance." The woman paid her bill and left, and Lila sat there with cold coffee thinking about second chances and whether she deserved one. Her phone rang. "Catherine. Divorce hearing is in 4 days, the lawyer said. You need to be back in the city. Can you make it?" "Yes." "Good. This is the final one. After this, you're done. Free and clear." Free and clear. It sounded simple. It wasn't. Lila drove back to the city the night before the hearing, staying at a hotel Adrian had arranged. Not the brownstone, too exposed, but a place with good security and a room on the 14th floor where she could see anyone coming. She couldn't sleep, kept thinking about tomorrow, about sitting in a courtroom while a judge dissolved 3 years of her life like it had never happened. Kept thinking about Ryan, about whether he'd be there, about what he'd do if he saw her. At 2 a.m., she gave up on sleep and went to the hotel gym, ran on a treadmill until her legs burned and her lungs screamed and her brain finally shut up long enough for her to breathe. When she got back to her room, there was a message from Adrian. "If you need company, I'm in room 1407, not sleeping either." She stood outside his door for a full minute before knocking. He answered in a t-shirt and sweatpants, looking rumpled and human in a way his suits never allowed. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "Not even close." "Come in." The room was identical to hers. Same beige walls, same generic art, same sterile functionality. Adrian had a laptop open on the desk, work he'd been pretending to focus on. "Do you ever actually sleep?" Lila asked. "Sometimes, usually around 4 or 5. I get an hour or two before meetings start." "That can't be healthy." "It's not, but it's what I've got." He gestured to the minibar. "Want something? I've got overpriced whiskey and overpriced water." "Water's good." They sat in chairs by the window, looking out at the city lights. It was quieter up here. Removed. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" Adrian asked. "I don't think ready is the right word. I'm going to do it whether I'm ready or not." "That's probably the definition of ready." Lila took a sip of water. "What happens after? After the divorce is final? After everything's signed and settled? What do I do with the rest of my life?" "Whatever you want." That's not helpful. It's true, though. I don't know what I want. I've spent so long being what other people needed me to be that I don't have any idea who I am when nobody's watching. Adrian leaned back in his chair. Then start there. Figure out who you are when nobody's watching. Try things. Fail at them. Try different things. Give yourself permission to be a mess for a while. I'm already a mess. You're already surviving. That's different. Is it? Yeah. Surviving is keeping your head above water. Being a mess is learning to swim. One's necessity, the other's choice. Lila looked at him. When did you get so philosophical? Chronic insomnia.
Gives you a lot of time to think.
They talked until the sky started to lighten, until the city began its morning transformation from sleeping to waking. Talked about nothing important, movies they'd seen, places they'd traveled, the strange small details of being human that you never discussed with people you were trying to impress. When dawn came properly, Adrian stood. "You should try to sleep for an hour or two," he said. "Big day ahead." "Yeah." Lila stood too. At the door, she turned back. "Thank you for this, for listening, for not trying to fix me. I'm learning that some things don't need fixing. They just need space to exist." The courtroom was different this time. Less formal, just lawyers and a judge and the administrative machinery of ending a marriage. Ryan wasn't there. Catherine had arranged it so he didn't have to be, didn't have to see Lila, didn't have another opportunity to intimidate or threaten. The proceedings took less than an hour. Documents were signed. Terms were agreed to. Lila got nothing. No alimony, no property, no shared assets. Just her freedom and her name back if she wanted it. She decided to keep heart for now. Sullivan felt like going backward, and she wasn't ready to excavate that history yet. When the judge declared the marriage dissolved, Lila felt nothing. No relief, no sadness, no sense of closure, just a flatness where emotion should have been. Outside the courthouse, Catherine shook her hand. "You're officially divorced. How does it feel?" "Empty." "That's normal. Give it time." "How much time?" "However much you need. There's no timeline for healing." Adrian was waiting by his car. When he saw Lila's face, he didn't ask how she felt, just opened the passenger door and drove her back to the hotel. "What now?" she asked as they pulled into the parking garage. "Now you decide. You can stay in the city. You can go back to the house up north. You can go anywhere. The brownstone apartment is yours as long as you want it. No rent, no strings." "I can't keep living off your charity." "It's not charity. Consider it an extended loan. Pay me back when you're on your feet." "That could be never." "Then it's never. I'm not worried about it." Lila looked out the window at the concrete walls of the parking structure. "I think I want to go back to the house, just for a little while. I'm not ready for the city yet." "Okay, I'll have Davis arrange transportation." "Adrian?" "Yeah?" "Why are you still doing this? The divorce is final. Ryan's legally out of my life. You've done everything you set out to do. Why are you still here?" He was quiet for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. "Because I started this intending to help someone escape," he said finally. "And somewhere along the way, I realized escape is just the first step. The harder part is figuring out what to do with the freedom once you have it, and I want to see what you do with yours. What if I waste it?" "Then you waste it. But at least it'll be your choice to waste." She went back to the house that afternoon. The drive felt different this time, less like fleeing, more like choosing. The distinction mattered. Over the next 3 months, Lila built a life in the small town. Not a big life, not an impressive one, just a life that was hers. She got a job at the diner. Nothing glamorous, just waitressing breakfast and lunch shifts. The owner, a woman named Carol, who asked no questions about why a city girl had landed in the middle of nowhere, paid cash and didn't care that Lila had no recent references. She rented a studio apartment above the hardware store. Tiny, drafty, with plumbing that made concerning noises. But it was hers. She signed the lease herself, paid the deposit from her first paycheck, decorated it with thrift store furniture that didn't match but didn't need to. She started therapy. Found a woman 2 towns over who specialized in trauma and didn't flinch when Lila described what 3 years with Ryan had been like. The sessions were hard. Lila cried through most of them. But slowly, incrementally, she started to understand that what had happened to her had a name, that abuse wasn't her fault, that leaving didn't make her a quitter. Adrian still called, less frequently now, but regularly. Once a week, usually Sundays. They'd talk for an hour about nothing important. Her week at the diner, his latest hotel acquisition, the weather, books they'd read. "You sound different," he said one Sunday in March. "Different how?" "Lighter, like you're not carrying as much weight." "I got a plant," Lila said. "A succulent." Carol said they're hard to kill. And I haven't killed it yet. It's still alive. That feels like progress." "It is progress." "It's a plant, Adrian." It's something you're keeping alive, something that depends on you and hasn't disappointed you yet. That's not nothing. Lila looked at the succulent on her windowsill. It was small and green and stubbornly alive despite her general incompetence with living things. Maybe you're right, she said. Spring came slowly, then all at once. The frozen ground thawed. Trees remembered how to bloom. The town filled with a kind of life that had been dormant through winter. Lila celebrated her 27th birthday alone. Not lonely alone, but peacefully alone. She bought herself a cupcake from the bakery, lit a single candle, made a wish she didn't say out loud. To figure out who I am. It felt achievable. Small enough to grasp. In April, Meridian Pharmaceuticals' investigation concluded. Ryan was terminated for cause, lost his severance, and was flagged in the industry as a liability. He tried to fight it, hired a lawyer, made noise about wrongful termination. It went nowhere. Catherine called to tell Lila about it. He's basically unhireable in pharmaceutical sales now, she said. Word gets around. He might find work eventually, but not in that field. Did Adrian have something to do with that? There was a pause. If he did, I wouldn't tell you. Plausible deniability and all that? Catherine. All I know is that sometimes bad people experience consequences. How those consequences arrive is above my pay grade. After she hung up, Lila sat with the information. Part of her felt vindicated. Part of her felt guilty for feeling vindicated. The rest of her just felt tired of thinking about Ryan at all. She called Adrian. Did you destroy Ryan's career? She asked without preamble. I facilitated an investigation into legitimate fraud. What his employer chose to do with that information was their decision. That's not an answer. Yes, it is. You just don't like it. I don't know how to feel about it. Then don't feel anything about it. He made choices. Those choices had consequences. You're not responsible for managing his outcomes. It feels like revenge. Maybe it is. Does that change anything? Lila thought about it. About Ryan's hands on her wrist. About hospital visits and lies and years of walking on eggshells. About the grocery store, him watching her, making sure she knew she'd never be safe. No, she said. I guess it doesn't. In May, a letter arrived at her apartment, forwarded from Catherine's office, no return address, just her name and handwriting she didn't recognize. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Dear Lila, I've been asked by a mutual acquaintance to ensure certain legal and financial matters are resolved to your satisfaction. Enclosed, please find documentation regarding the transfer of funds from a settlement that has been quietly negotiated on your behalf. You'll note that the amount covers approximately 3 years of wages lost, medical expenses incurred, and emotional damages sustained. The source has requested anonymity, but wants you to know that this isn't charity. It's restitution for time stolen. The funds are yours to use as you see fit. No strings, no obligations, just an acknowledgement that what happened to you was wrong and that you deserve compensation for surviving it. Best regards. A friend attached was a bank statement showing a deposit of $75,000. Lila stared at it for a long time. Then she called Adrian. Did you do this? Did I do what? Adrian. He sighed. I may have facilitated a settlement from Ryan's insurance company, civil suit for damages related to documented abuse. His carrier decided settling was cheaper than litigating. That's not how insurance works. It is if you have lawyers who know what they're doing. I didn't ask for this. I know, but you deserved it, and I was in a position to make it happen, so I did. Lila sat down on her thrift store couch, holding the bank statement like it might evaporate. What am I supposed to do with this? She asked. Whatever you want. Pay off debt. Go to school. Travel. Invest it. Burn it in a trash can. It's yours. I don't know if I can accept this. Why not? Because it feels like you're still taking care of me, and I need to learn how to take care of myself. Taking care of yourself and accepting help aren't mutually exclusive. You can do both. Are they? Because it feels like every time I start to stand on my own, you're there with a safety net. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Layla, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to hear it. I'm not your safety net. I'm just someone who had resources and chose to use them. What you did with those resources, leaving, rebuilding, surviving, that was all you. I didn't make you brave. I didn't make you strong. I just gave you a platform to discover you already were those things.
I don't feel brave. Brave people never do. They just do the scared thing anyway. Lila looked out her window at the main street below. A normal day. Normal people. A life she was building one small decision at a time. Thank you, she said, for everything. For the apartment and the lawyers and the money and the phone calls. For seeing me when I couldn't see myself. You're welcome. But Lila. Yeah? This is the last time I'm going to insert myself into your life uninvited.
From here on out, if you need something, you ask. Otherwise, I'm stepping back. Not because I don't care, but because you're right. You need to learn to stand on your own. And I need to learn to let you. It felt like an ending, like a door closing. It also felt like permission to begin. Summer came. Lila used some of the settlement money to enroll in community college classes. Nothing ambitious, just general education credits, exploring subjects she'd never had time for. Art history, creative writing, introduction to psychology. She discovered she liked learning, liked the way knowledge expanded her understanding of the world, liked being the oldest person in most of her classes and not caring. She made a friend, another woman in her psychology class, mid-30s, recently divorced, cautiously rebuilding. They got coffee after class, compared notes on therapy and terrible ex-husbands, and the strange relief of being alone without being lonely. You're different than you were in September, Carol said one day at the diner. Different how? You smile now, real smiles, not the polite ones you gave customers when you first started, and you don't apologize for everything anymore. Lila thought about it. Carol was right. She'd stopped saying sorry for things that weren't her fault, stopped making herself small, stopped flinching when people raised their voices or moved too quickly. I guess I am different, she said. It's good. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. In August, Adrian called. I'm in the area, he said. Business thing. Thought I'd stop by if you're free. They met at the diner. He looked the same, expensive suit, tired eyes, the particular brand of competent exhaustion that came from running an empire. He ordered coffee. She brought him pie without asking. You remembered, he said. You always order pie. Fair point. They talked about surface things at first. His latest acquisition, her classes, the diner's new menu. Then Adrian set down his fork and looked at her directly. You look happy, he said. I'm not unhappy. That's different than happy, I think. But it's something. It's a start. Yeah. Lila refilled his coffee. Can I ask you something? Always. Do you regret it? Any of it? The time, the money, the involvement in someone else's mess? Adrian considered the question seriously. No, I don't regret it. It cost me resources I'll never miss, and time I would have wasted anyway. And in exchange, I got to watch someone rebuild themselves from the ground up. That's worth more than another hotel or another zero in my bank account. What about you? Are you doing okay? I'm the same as always, working too much, sleeping too little, building things. You should try building a life instead of an empire. He smiled. You sound like my therapist. You have a therapist? Started seeing one in January. Figured if I was going to tell other people to get help, I should probably take my own advice. And it turns out I have some things to work through. Shocking, I know. They talked for another hour. When Adrian left, Lila walked him to his car. Thank you, she said, for stopping by, for checking in, for everything. You've already thanked me multiple times. I know, but I mean it more now. I know you do. He got in his car, then rolled down the window. Lila, you're going to be okay. You know that, right? I'm starting to believe it. Good. Because it's true. She watched him drive away, taillights disappearing into the distance. Then she went back inside and finished her shift. Fall came again. A full year since she'd left Ryan, since she'd slept in Adrian's bed and started the long, messy process of saving herself. Lila enrolled full-time for the spring semester, declared a major in social work, figured if she was going to survive her own trauma, she might as well help other people survive theirs. She moved out of the studio into a one-bedroom with actual heat and plumbing that worked, adopted a cat from the shelter, a grumpy orange tabby that hated everyone but tolerated her, named him Vincent for no particular reason except it felt right. She started dating, nothing serious, Just coffee with a guy from her economics class who made her laugh. It didn't go anywhere, but it was nice. Reminded her that not all men were dangerous, that she could trust her judgment again. On the anniversary of her divorce, Lila drove to the coast, spent the day walking on the beach, watching waves erase footprints, thinking about impermanence and new beginnings and all the metaphors water offered for free. She called Adrian from the beach. "I made it a year," she said. "I know. How does it feel?" "Like I'm actually alive instead of just not dead. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense. I wanted to tell you something, and I need you to not make a big deal about it." "Okay. I'm paying you back, not the settlement money. That's mine. But the apartment, the legal fees, all of it. I've worked out a payment plan with Catherine. It'll take me 5 years, but I'm doing it." "Lila, you don't have to." "I do. Not because I owe you, but because I need to know I can. I need to know I'm capable of standing on my own 2 feet financially. Let me do this." Adrian was quiet. "Okay. If it's important to you, okay." "It is." "Then I'll accept your payments with the understanding that you're doing this for you, not for me." "Exactly." They talked until her phone battery warned her it was dying. Before they hung up, Adrian said, "I'm proud of you. I know that probably sounds patronizing, but I am." "It doesn't sound patronizing. It sounds nice. Thank you." "You're welcome. Now go enjoy your beach day." Lila sat on the sand until sunset, until the sky turned colors that didn't have names, and the world felt both impossibly large and comfortably small. She thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, terrified, broken, unable to imagine a future that didn't include Ryan's anger. And she thought about the woman she was now, still scared sometimes, still healing, but fundamentally different, fundamentally hers. The sun sank below the horizon. Leela stood, brushed sand from her jeans, and walked back to her car. She had class in the morning, work in the afternoon, a cat that needed feeding and a life that needed living. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't easy, but it was hers, and that she was learning was enough. Months turned into years. Lila graduated with her bachelor's degree, then her master's. Started working at a women's shelter 3 towns over, helping other people navigate the impossible maze of leaving abusive relationships. She was good at it, patient, understanding, unafraid of the messy, non-linear reality of trauma. She met someone eventually, a teacher named Marcus, who was kind and steady and understood when she needed space. They dated for 2 years before moving in together, another year before getting engaged. The wedding was small, just friends, her therapist, Carol from the diner, a few colleagues from the shelter. Adrian came, sat in the back, didn't make a fuss, left before the reception ended because that's who he was. But he was there, and that mattered. Lila caught him on his way out. "Thank you for coming. Wouldn't have missed it. You know you changed my life, right?" Adrian shook his head. "I gave you a door. You're the one who walked through it. Still, thank you." "You're welcome. Be happy, Lila. You've earned it." She watched him leave, this man who'd saved her without being her savior, who'd helped without controlling, who'd understood that sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is give them space to save themselves. Years later, when Lila told her story to the women at the shelter, she never mentioned Adrian by name, just said that someone had helped her when she needed it most, that kindness from strangers was real. That escape was possible even when it seemed impossible. She didn't hear from him often anymore. A card at Christmas, the occasional email checking in. They'd moved into different orbits, different lives, but the connection remained, quiet, undemanding, permanent. And sometimes, late at night when she couldn't sleep, Lila would think about that first night in the penthouse, how terrified she'd been, how certain she was that her life was over. She'd been right about one thing, that life had ended. But it turned out endings and beginnings were the same thing, just viewed from different angles. And the life that came after? It wasn't perfect. It wasn't without struggle. But it was hers. Fully, completely, undeniably hers. And that made all the difference. Somewhere in the city, in a penthouse 40 stories above the street, Adrian Voss sat at his desk and looked out at the lights below. He thought occasionally about Lila, about how she was doing, about whether she'd found the peace she'd been searching for. He hoped she had. Hoped she'd built something worth keeping. Hoped she knew that helping her had changed him as much as it had changed her. Some stories don't have clean endings, don't wrap up neatly with all questions answered and all wounds healed. But they do have moments, points where one life touches another and both are altered. This was one of those moments, one of those stories. And if you asked either of them whether it was worth it, the fear, the fight, the long, slow climb back to something resembling whole, they'd both say yes, without hesitation, without regret. Yes, the end.